I'm just testing. Can you hear me on WebEx?
Yes.
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 I'm going to wait a couple more minutes, but I'm going to start the meeting in a couple of minutes, but it seems like we don't have everybody. I'd like to call the RTM budget hearing for Wednesday, April 24th to order. Will the clerk take the roll?
Ken Astorita, Peter Britton, Melissa Longo, Brooks Baracino, Tara Cook Littman,
Here.
Amy O'Shea,
Here.
Dave Rock, Chris Shea, Mike Hardigan, Jeff Steele, Cindy Waldron, Laura Carson, Michelle McCabe,
Here.
Marcy Spalier, Liz Esma, Josh Garskoff,
Here.
Kristen O'Neill, Sharon Pastilli, Jay Walk, Jennifer Barahona, Rob Blanchard, Nancy Donnie, Andy Graceffa, Steve Barretts, John Delgado, John Kuhn, Scott Nickel, Carrie Burcham, Chris Carroll,
Here.
Colin Colburn, Christine Ludwizak, Drew Georgiadis, Lisa Havey, Mark McDermott,
Here.
Karen Wackerman,
Here.
Matt Ambrose,
Here. Here.
Justin Contrado, Margaret Horton, Pierre Ratsky.
Thank you. Let's all stand for the pledge. I've been asked to change up the order a little bit of our meeting today, so we're going to start with Town Plan and Zoning, Jim Went. If you want to just come on up and give us a little bit summary about your budget.
Good evening. Jim Went, Planning Director.
Mr. Went, you just have to speak right into the microphone so
Okay.
everyone can hear.
How's that?
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to begin on page 54 with the Zoning Board of Appeals. The only increase proposed in this budget is $500 in the fees and professional services line due to increasing costs of court transcripts for appeals. That's the only change to the ZBA budget proposed. The TPZ budget on page 56. The total increase of the non-salary related line items is $693. The bulk of that is our share of, you may have heard some other departments already, our share of a flyover, an aerial flyover that's happening this year. That's really the long and short of it, but I'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. For members that are online, just a reminder to put that you want to be recognized in the chat if you have a question. Are there any questions for Mr. Went? Seeing none, thank you for coming out, Mr. Went.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to police. I think I see Captain Waya here in the audience. If you want to come on up and give us a little bit. I think you'll find this budget on page 142.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. Deputy Chief Eddie Waya, Fairfield Police. I'm just going to give a brief overview and some highlights of our police department budget proposals for FY25. The most significant increases are payroll related, driven by the contractual 2.75% salary increases, as well as our proposal to absorb the costs of the Fairfield County Regional Dispatch Center captain for the dual purpose of reorganizing and achieving appropriate staffing at the FCRD as well as at the Fairfield Police Department. Cuts were made from several budget lines in an attempt to lower the impact of the salary and benefits costs associated with this move. The majority of cuts are seen in our training overtime budget, mostly due to moving our SWAT team to a regional organization, which will drive down annual costs of in-house training overtime. And we also cut from our maintenance of automotive budget line, which we are confident can be sustained by funds received from outside job vehicle fees that we charge to outside vendors. The only change to my knowledge since our meeting with the Board of Finance is in that line where we are going in at a negative 200,000 because we do anticipate somewhere around 400,000 in revenue on that. Other necessary increases will be seen in the following lines: overtime earnings and replacement, information technology, fees and professional services, communications, and training. Our overall proposed budget increase is 2.6%. We feel our approach is as conservative as possible while supporting our goals as a police agency and our ability to serve the public in the best way possible. And with that said, we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Waya. Are there any questions for Chief Waya regarding this budget item? Representative Carson.
Hi, thank you. Laura Carson, District 4. Could you just I get a little confused about the fund that's set up for the overtime and then you use it to pay off the cars. Can you just explain that in a more succinct way? I followed in the Board of Finance and I just get a little confused. So if you could help clear that up, thanks.
Absolutely. So there are hundreds of jobs out there from outside agencies that require police presence. Most of them require for the officer to be in a patrol car. So when it's necessary to have a patrol car as part of the police presence, there is an additional fee tacked onto that the company that's hiring us has to pay. And that all goes into a fund that funds our maintenance of automotive repair line.
And then the money that they use to buy the cars, where does that come from?
So the money to purchase the, sorry, was somebody going to answer that question?
Deputy Chief, I just want to let you know that Frank McNeary, Budget Director, I just want to let you know that I'm in case there's any clarification needed, I'm just on Zoom, but I'm not in the room. So
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Do you want to answer that question?
yeah, I was just going to go over kind of the accounting and just touch on what you said. So there's kind of two aspects to the outside jobs that the police department does. One is a flat fee for the actual use of the vehicle at an outside job, and the other is the fee for the police officer. The fee for the vehicle rolls into the general fund budget through the maintenance and repair of automotive line. That is the line that the deputy chief mentioned. The fees for the police officers go into a special revenue fund. So the overtime revenue that comes in for these jobs for these officers, we also pay the officers out of that fund. So it's supposed to be a net zero. However, that fund has taken in more money over the years and accrued a balance. So to reduce that balance and not have excess funds sit in here, we've used the money to pay for additional cars. Not additional cars, but for the cars in the police department. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Representative Estrada.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. Chief, thank you for being here. Just a couple of questions, and I probably should know the answer to this one. But on the revenue line, you've got miscellaneous for about $565,000. I assume that's some sort of a grant or something like that. Can you explain what that is?
Some of that is grant money, but a lot of it is also revenue from outside jobs.
Okay. And then my major question is, do you feel that you are properly staffed from an officer perspective to meet the needs of the community?
I think every year that goes by, this conversation comes up a lot. We are getting closer to some of our neighboring jurisdictions that have similar structures and similar populations and similar call volume, but we are still a little bit short, in my opinion. We have, over the last 2 years, increased by 4 personnel. The difficulty in realizing the benefits of that is maintaining the minimum staffing. So it seems that every time we hire new officers, we have a couple more retire. So we haven't yet been at that full staffing for a long enough time to really see if that is going to start significantly impacting the overtime lines.
Is there a plan to get to full staffing at this point, or is it simply because you're losing officers faster than you can bring them in?
It's a timing issue, and it's cyclical. In my career here, there have definitely been times where we were static. Right now, there has been a lot of turnover. I would say that we're kind of on the other side of the bell curve right now. I think we're stabilizing. We have 3 officers that have been offered conditional jobs, but they have to go through the whole process of all the remaining hiring tests that they have to go through, like the psychological and the polygraph, and then they go to the police academy, and then they go through field training. So it is really like a year and a half before we really see them on the road by themselves and offsetting those vacancies. We're anticipating 1, maybe 2 more retirements next year, which is a lot lower than it has been for the last couple of years.
Are you losing officers to other jurisdictions?
No, for the most part, we get several officers from other jurisdictions. This year, we had 3 unexpected retirements. One was an unanticipated family issue for one of our officers. One was an injury that the officer sustained in a previous agency where he worked. And the other was another officer that just hit his years in and decided it was time to go.
So just along the lines of that, so then how do you foresee, based on like the staffing at your current staffing level and with potential retirements and all that kind of stuff, how do you see that impacting the force's ability to do its job in protecting the people of Fairfield, and particularly in light of just the general increase in crime and things that we're seeing in general, and has that impacted the town as well?
We always make it work. We're often in a position where we're trying to do more with less. We're not strangers to that. We're fulfilling all of our duties, all of our obligations, but what does get challenging is every year there are new demands. Police are asked to step outside of traditional policing roles, and we try to make do with what we have, but it does spread us a little thin. So, this year, one of the most important things for us was to try to get the FCRD sorted out, get that properly staffed, and get that captain that's over there over to the police department. So since that was our primary focus, we did not come in here asking for an increase in personnel, but that doesn't mean that next year we may not.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I'd just like to say, on behalf of probably everybody in this room, thank you for all the things that you guys do, keeping all of us safe. And I know, every time you guys go to work, you're putting your lives on the line. And I just want you to know that we all appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Horton.
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 10. First of all, thank you. I recently came on one of the tours that you did for us, and it was, I mean, really just incredible to see all the inner workings. I did not expect to be there for 3 hours, but it was a really engaging 3 hours. And one of the things I was most impressed with was all of the work you're doing with just community policing and your LCSW on staff. And I'm an LCSW myself, so I was particularly interested in it. I was curious if you had any plans about increasing the number of LCSWs you have on staff, because just hearing all the things that she's doing and could be doing, it feels like maybe we could use some more social workers.
Absolutely. That's something that we've spoken about. It's something that I think we have to ease into. And step one is our LCSW is planning on taking on interns from the local colleges, which, you know, that's one hand washes the other. And if we can find a way to measure the metrics of that and how it's been helping, then absolutely, we would love to see more full-time social workers.
Yeah, that would be great. And I love that she's taking on interns, though that also requires an hour per week per intern of clinical supervision. So it's more time. So if we can get more, that would be great.
Thank you. Representative Carroll online.
Thank you. And Chief, thanks for being here. Sorry, I can't be in person, but I'm sick. You don't want me around. I had a two-part question. I want to follow up on Ken's question because I wasn't clear. If you're short on staffing, is it a recruiting issue or a budget issue?
It's a little bit of both. We've been okay with recruiting. It's just more that we see the applicant pool dwindle a little more each year. Quite frankly, it's a difficult time to sell this profession. But we have a good pool of candidates that made it through to receive the conditional job offers. So I think we're fine with recruiting. Budget is an issue because every new officer that we bring on, I mean, after you calculate salary and benefit, you're probably looking at somewhere between $120,000, $150,000 per officer. And like I said, with more pressing issues and bigger priorities that we really had to solidify for this coming budget year, FY25, we had to focus on that. But I do think that next year we will be coming with a very detailed proposal that addresses a lot of the staffing needs as we see them.
Okay, thank you. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Zezma.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Liz Esma, District 4. Thank you for being here, Deputy Chief. And I also want to thank you for, and your entire department for what you do for the town. Following Representative Carson's question, this maintenance line that has been taken down is somewhat of an offset, if I understand. What is the balance of the maintenance funds? Maybe Frank, that's a question for you.
If you want to move on to your next question, I could look at them, but I just got to pull it up.
Okay, I
We
appreciate
can come
that.
back to that. Is
Yeah,
that
we
okay,
certainly can.
Representative Zezma?
All right, thank you.
All right, while he's looking at that, we have Representative Ratsky online. I think you're muted. I'll give you a minute to figure that out. If there are any other questions. Representative Steele.
Jeff Steele, District 3. Hi, Ed. How are you? And this is more just out of curiosity. And it's really almost probably insignificant. I'm just curious. Crossing guards. In the past, we paid $207,000, then 162, and then went down to 18. Was that transferred to a different? It was. Just remind me.
Yeah, the crossing guards were transferred to the Board of Education.
So they're over all the board of ed. Okay,
Correct.
Just curious. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Representative Ratsky, does it work? If not, you can type your question into the chat and I can read it off. Frank, do you have the answer to Representative Zezma's question?
Yeah, as of the end of FY23, it was about $2 million FY24 estimate that I have is about 1.9 million. And with the purchase of the 10 cars, you're at about 1.5 million. So it'd go from 2023, about 2 million to about 1.5 million.
And that was just for collection of these maintenance-specific fees?
I wouldn't call them maintenance-specific fees. That is the revenue, that is the excess revenue that is in the special revenue fund for outside jobs for pay for overtime.
Okay, so that's not broken down by the vehicle fee and the fee for the officer?
No, so it's kind of a little bit confusing, but so there's a flat fee that a vendor will pay for the car. That comes directly into the general fund. It offsets an expense line, which is maintenance and repair of automotive. So that's why that line's negative in the budget. We've used this excess funding in this fund to pay for vehicles, but it's a special revenue fund, so it's really meant to pay for the officers. There's just been an excess because there's been a lot of jobs, and the police can utilize special officers that are paid at a lower rate to do some of these jobs. So that's why a fund has been built up. So we've seen some excess revenue built up in a special revenue fund that would otherwise just be sitting here. And so we thought that the thought has been over the last, I would say, about 3 years, and it seems to continue and to draw that down over time to avoid a fiscal lift and to pay for vehicles that would otherwise be in the general fund operating budget.
Okay, thanks. And historically, is this the only way we have funded maintenance? Sorry, Frank, we had a little feedback there. Is this the only source of funding for maintenance for our police cars, especially for new people, so they have a greater sense of that?
Historically, I would say no, this isn't the only source of funding.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Representative Retzky is set again, but he just went off camera.
I hope so. Yes. Can you hear me now?
Awesome. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So my question was, Representative Astrida earlier said that, crime is up in certain areas. I was just wondering if you could speak to, are there certain crime categories that are up? Are there certain crime categories that are down? Are there certain crime categories that are level? Where are we seeing crime increasing? Where are we seeing crime, decreasing from last year, from a couple years ago? What are our priorities in that respect? Thank you.
So I can give you a little bit of data, some light metrics. We're tracking at a higher call volume this year, but most of that's attributed to a higher pace of motor vehicle enforcement, as well as increased property checks, both to drive down increases in property crimes, as well as an assurance measure of projecting our stance of readiness during tense times. And when I say that, I'm referring to earlier in the year, there were some Hamas threats and anything that's kind of like getting national attention that makes our smaller communities here in Fairfield on edge. We always make sure that we provide a police presence on request to kind of keep everybody feeling safe. Call volume in certain areas increases as call volume in other areas decreases. So the overall number washes. For example, we saw general larcenies almost double from the 100 range to the 200 range, while we saw thefts from motor vehicles almost half from the 200 range to the 100 range. That said, the trends that affect the budget the most are mandates that require increased training, increased demands for police to fulfill non-traditional policing roles, and increased demands for police presence to show a stance of readiness, which drives up our overtime costs. And these are all good things, but there are financial implications to them. I'll give you a little calls for service comparison. As of March 1st, we were about 4,400 calls for service over where we were at that same time last fiscal year. So that was about 32,200 last year versus 36,600 this year as of March. So that means, with another 4 months to go. This is mostly due to increased self-initiated traffic stop activity, as I mentioned earlier, which we anticipate will incidentally result in increased revenues for motor vehicle infractions. By March 1st last year, we had 1,385 traffic stops resulting in an arrest. And when I say arrest, that can include an infraction, a misdemeanor summons, or a custodial arrest. And February of this year, we were already at 2,274. So that's a big jump, almost 100% increase. As I said earlier about business location checks, property checks, we are up from 10,034 last year to 11,127 this year. As of March 1st, general larcenies are up from 189 last year to 274 this year, but theft from motor vehicles, which are typically the catalytic converter thefts and unlocked vehicle rummaging, those are down from 245 the previous year to 199 this year. Noise complaints are up from 213 to 254, as expected with the publicity and traction of the revised noise ordinance, but that's a nominal increase when looking at, we're averaging around 60,000 calls for service per year. Calls for service that were called in specifically regarding emotionally disturbed persons are from 49 last year to 72 this year. But as you know, there are hundreds of calls from merely assistance requested calls to breach of peace, public disturbance, and assault that have an underlying mental health aspect to them, and we see those increase every year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Hi, Captain Way. Thank you very much for coming and for watching out for our community. I wanted to follow up on the discussion of staffing and the discussion of the fund created by the demand of companies who need staff. Does each officer have a maximum number of hours per week they can work? And if that's true and we're tight on staffing, and I know some of these companies, it's required that they have a police officer present during when they're digging up the road or whatever. Is that a burden to the police staff? I know it sounds very profitable, but is it a burden to the actual officers?
So the officers, they do have a maximum amount of hours that they can put in each week. They actually have a maximum amount of consecutive hours that they can work each day. As far as the outside vendors requesting police presence, there's almost like a hierarchy. So preferably there should be a police officer directing traffic for them. They have the option of presenting a safety plan to us where we could approve that they use their own flag person, which we do see sometimes. If a job is going to go unfilled and we feel that it would be safe for the job to be unfilled, then we just deny their ability to do that. But we also have our special police officers that most often fill in those vacancies when officers aren't available.
Because it has to be a licensed police officer or a on duty, or what's the determination? What's the right word? Qualified police officer or?
It doesn't have to be a sworn police officer. That's why we can utilize our special officers for that. But the special officers have traffic direction training, so that makes them qualified for some of those jobs.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm glad that you're getting that. Is it a sergeant that's coming back from the
Captain.
Captain? That'll be really helpful. So thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McCabe.
Cape District 4. Thank you, Deputy Chief, for being here. I was wondering if you could return to an answer you provided earlier. I was hoping you could clarify in the case that I heard.
Representative McCabe, you're
speaking of the licensed social worker, that is, there's not much I can do about that. Is it any better?
Yes.
Yes, it's better.
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering if I heard correctly that in order to potentially increase the staffing of licensed social workers to the department, that some data needed to be collected. Did I hear that correctly?
Generally speaking, anytime we're going to propose to increase staff in any area in the police department, we would gather metrics to see where the needs are and what the potential benefits are.
Okay, and I heard when you were going through the different statistics of the kinds of calls and issues that you confront, you in the department, that the breach of peace and domestic disputes and others that you mentioned had a mental health component were increasing. Did I hear that correctly?
That's correct. And there are probably a lot of reasons, some that we know, some that we're still learning. I think we've gotten a lot better at identifying a lot of criminal behaviors that have a mental health component underlying. So part of it is that, yes, they are increasing in frequency, but a lot of that increase has to do with our ability to detect it.
Okay, thank you. I just would like to say that I agree with Representative Horton, first, that the tour was excellent, and also that the work placing the licensed social worker in your department was really impactful, and certainly I would support a request for the addition of more licensed social workers to the force. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Colburn.
Colin Colburn, District 8, Deputy Chief, thank you for being here and thank you for everything that you and your department do. I'm curious, going back to the staffing questions that we've been asking, you said you feel like you're short-staffed. Do you guys have metrics or data that you track to kind of understand and quantify what that equal, obviously, like, you can never predict what your demand is going to be, but just try to get an understanding of how you think about that equilibrium of staff to volume of calls?
Yeah, and there's established data and there's also anecdotal. What I can try to get you guys is the report that we put together last year that kind of shows the comparison with our neighboring agencies that are similar in makeup, that the staffing that they have and where we measure up. And we're close, but I think we're still a little bit on the shorter side. Anecdotally speaking, you know, I just see how as I said earlier, we take on more and more of these non-traditional policing roles. And what that requires is for us to kind of compartmentalize and create all of these different specialty divisions that require staffing. So while we could say, yeah, we probably need another 2 police officers on the road, we could probably use another police officer or 2 in every one of those individual divisions, because every year that goes by, the demands increase, the expectations increase, and those divisions start to feel it after a while. So it's something that we're really going to have to analyze over the next year and see where the biggest gaping holes are and kind of put that together in a proposal.
That makes sense. I appreciate you being diligent with, you know, the way you guys think about your budget. But I would just like to say that it sounds like, given the volume increases that you're talking about here, I think you should be asking for more officers this year, not next year.
Thank you, Representative Donnie.
Hi, Chief, Deputy Chief. I'm Nancy Donnie, District 6. When I've heard you present and some of your colleagues, it's always about the retirement that these people are surprise you with. I'm just wondering what kind of forecasting, or is it the union contract that prevents them? So if you know that it takes a year and a half to train a new person, can we do some more forward forecasting where we might be a little overstaffed, but you're getting that rotation?
We can't actually fill any positions until the positions are vacated. So if there's no vacancy, then we can't hire. As far as I think it's a town restriction. Like we can't hire more staff than we are approved to have. So right now we're approved for 112 officers. We can't bring more than that onto the payroll. So we have to wait for those vacancies and then fill those vacancies. A lot of the officers don't really talk much about their leave plan, their retirement plans until later on, because that could negatively affect them. You know, they kind of keep that stuff close to the chest. That's understandable. But this year, like I said, three retirements that we could not have forecasted because they were unexpected.
Thank you. I see that online I have Representative Carroll, but I'm going to make sure no one has questions beforehand. Representative Walk, I think, had a question, hasn't asked one yet.
Hey, Deputy Chief, again, Jay Walk, District 5. So let's, we were just talking about officers you guys maybe needing more, which we know you need more, but I'm concerned with the 911 operators and them, because they're heroes also, and to me, and they mean a lot to all of us, especially when I had a call and got somebody on the phone. So you're recruiting more are you in shortage of 911 operators?
So that's a separate budget, which I'm also happy to talk about. And that's a good question. That's probably the primary issue we're having, is that the dispatch center is understaffed. So there has been a lot of discussion and a lot of focus on what those numbers should be, what the minimum staffing should be. And that is factored into the budget and our plans for the dispatch center moving forward.
So you're correcting what's going on down, because, I think on our tour, I think you were mentioning that you were having problems down there with communications, was it? With people not getting the calls that were coming in were not being handled correctly?
Not really that. I would say the bigger issues are them just feeling the strain of feeling understaffed. There was a federal engineering study done a couple of years ago that said it should be staffed by 33 dispatchers. And over the couple of years of development, we kind of whittled that down to 22. So I think they're definitely feeling the burn of that. I think there's burnout that comes with that. And as far as things not working, I mean, I think just little bit of lack of training opportunities that we were working on sorting out, some interoperability issues that we've been working on sorting out. At the end of the day, the 911 call comes in, it gets taken, and officers get dispatched. So we make it work, but there are probably some streamlining things that need to happen that they are working on.
And I also think they're underpaid. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. That is a separate budget item, but while we have Chief Wyatt here, if you want to, that's on 258, that budget. Does anyone else have a first question before I go to representatives that have second questions? Okay, seeing none, Representative Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Chief, I'm just going to follow up on this again, and I know any issue like this is more complex than we're going to understand. And this is in regard to the recruiting and having to wait for a vacancy. And even though there's probably some statistical models that you can anticipate an average number of replacements you're going to need each year. And I'll follow up with this separately. Whose ordinance or whose rule this is, I don't think it's yours. Would there be a problem that I know you wouldn't be the only department who might overstaff what you're allocated to, if in fact you started recruiting and somebody you thought was going to retire took an extra 6 months, you're stuck with an extra officer, which everyone seems here to agree you need this support. What is the downside if we were able to manage alleviating that rule, finding the funding, ensuring that you're recruiting in anticipation of retirements or injury or for whatever reason? Is there a downside to doing that, or it's just you're properly following the rules as they are today?
I'll give you two parts to that question. So one part is what I should have been more clear earlier on, is that there is a degree of forecasting we can do with the recruiting that if we know we have 3 vacancies, that doesn't mean we will only generate a list of 3 people. Right now, we have 3 people that we are working on getting ready to go to the police academy to fill 3 vacancies that we have, but we have a list of about 7 people who are eligible. So if we do get retirements, we'll just start pulling off that list. So it's not that we have to start the recruiting process all over again. It's just that we cannot put those people on the payroll because we can't go over the amount of staffing that we are allotted.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Hello again. So it sounds like you're busier than every year. Do the universities, when they are increasing the size of their students, do they notify the town, the police department? I know Sacred Heart has been growing immensely. Fairfield U has been growing, and they don't pay property tax, but they use a lot of our services, and they definitely put a burden on the police department. And so I was hoping, and I was just wondering, do they notify the police department or the town if they're increasing their enrollment? And so you can sort of maybe anticipate that, the town can anticipate that?
I couldn't answer specifically if they intentionally call us to notify us that they're increasing in numbers, but we have such a close relationship with them. We have such a good partnership with them, and we have so much dialogue with them that if that were the case, that would likely come up in conversation.
Okay, I think we need to make sure that is part of the process, that we're, anticipating, we're going to increase enrollment by 5,000, and then you can extrapolate how that's going to impact the police department and the services required. Because I think it would be an important part of you guys being as efficient and as prepared as possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Steele.
Jeff Steele, District 3. Just a question with what happened maybe 10 days ago, that smash and grab at the Trumbull Mall. It seems, it hits home a little bit because it's close by. Many people here in Fairfield go there. Does that, and we talk about the level of staff that we have, does that change things internally? Obviously, it may change what you decide to police, but does something like that, when it happens in such a public place like that, how does that impact you guys? In other words, you're not going to tell us how you're going to change your strategies necessarily, obviously, but is that an example of, and I know that those malls used to be sort of policed, quote unquote, much more than they are now. And so they brazenly go in there, smash and grab. But I guess the first question is, has that something like that happened in Fairfield? I mean, I haven't heard of one. Have those on a smaller scale happened here? And secondly, does that put up your red flag more such that, wow, we need more staff here, or we need more staff there, or how does that play into things? Or is it just, an anomaly? It happened, it's nearby, and we're just more vigilant?
Yeah, and it's the nature of our business, and it's what draws a lot of us to the business, is that every day is a new adventure. We've had, I would say probably maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, we had a string of smash and grabs at our jewelry stores on Black Rock Turnpike. That was a big thing. But anytime something like that happens close to home, our guard is always up, because we always have to wonder, well, is this something that's going to travel from town to town? And that's why we kind of keep our finger on the pulse of everything that's happening within a certain mile radius of our jurisdiction. And if something like that happens, we might release it to our shifts and say, okay, this just happened in Trumbull, smash and grab. Make sure you're watching your jewelry stores tonight a little more closely. It's just something that we do on a daily basis.
Okay, I figured that was the case. And I mean, I would echo the sentiments said tonight about, is making sure that the police force is at the adequate level it needs to be. When you see incidents like that, it makes you think, well, I mean, should we add more? Should we have more? So I'm certainly in favor of that. And I'm also echoing the sentiment here about, and we talked about this before, more social workers on staff, because that is certainly an increase, or an area we're going to see an increase in issues that we have to respond to. I think you mentioned in terms of, there was a mental health number of 55 up to 79 this past year alone. So that shows that that's going to be an increase. Therefore, I would think that would, demand an increase in staff on the social worker side, because that role has been filled so well now and has carried a lot of weight in what you guys do and for this town. So I think that's really important. And lastly, I do want to thank you for bringing us all on for the tour of the department. That was very useful. I think a number of us went there. Eye-opening for some who hadn't seen, and reassuring for others, and really helpful that we got to do that. So thank you. And thank you for all the work the police force does here.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
If I could, one item.
Yep, go ahead, Mr. Becker.
I
Speak into the
Yeah,
mic.
so two things. So one, message received on the hiring piece. We will see what we can do to at least work with you. Part of it's about going over a budget line, not just the head count, but 2 people working, then the budget goes over. But if we can work within, the department to improve that a little bit, then we'll work on seeing what we can do to at least fix that. The other piece, and I just wanted to bring up, in Fairfield Coastal Neighbors magazine, the deputy chief, along with the licensed clinical social worker, Jessica Bloomberg, were featured in the May 2024. So congrats, and that's a really exciting thing. And everyone should be getting that in the mailbox, and take a look and read it. And it's a great piece. So congrats.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Thank you. I just want to say thank you myself, and we did really appreciate the police tours, and we appreciate all your service to the town. So thank you to the whole entire police force. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we're going to go back to legal services. First on our agenda, page 75, Attorney Pierce is here to discuss this budget item.
Okay, good evening, members. So the legal budget for 2024-2025, as approved by the Board of Finance, is $775,000. The primary change in the budget from the prior year is related to the UI litigation. We have budgeted $200,000 to cover legal fees, expert fees, and lobbyist fees. Aside from that, the budget is relatively unchanged from the prior year. The town's legal needs in a particular case vary year to year, but generally are pretty significant, as many members are probably aware. And as you've probably seen from the budget meeting, there is an appeal from the Board of Finance's cut to $100,000, which is intended to apply to charter revision. It's not it's part of the overall legal budget. It's not a sub-account. So the town could proceed with charter revision with or without the $100,000 being allocated. I think it's prudent to budget appropriately for it, which is why that was included in the budget. And that was based on, we developed that number with the budget director based on, in part based on what was spent previously in the last go around on charter revision. We can speak about that some more, but our charter is extremely antiquated. There's numerous provisions that are confusing. In fact, if you read almost any provision, it's probably ambiguous. The charter has not been revised since 2006. We're supposed to do it every 10 years. I know that there's a sense that maybe we shouldn't do it because the last revision failed. I don't think that that's really relevant to our decision here. We need to revise the charter. It's a long process to go through a charter revision commission, so it really should start early in the next fiscal year. It would take, the goal would be to get on the ballot for 2025. So there's still a long process, and that would represent a 3-year gap from when the prior revision to the charter was on the ballot. And I don't want to prejudge what would come out of that process, but A lot of the work that the prior commission did was actually very good, and a lot of it would be, I'm sure, utilized by the commission in a future revision. And something that I would expect to be done is that the changes made would be broken up into several questions so that at a minimum, we'd have certain success and we would not have one omnibus question, which is unusual in charter revision. So I'm happy to take questions about either the appeal or the legal budget itself.
Thank you. And I just want members to be aware that our first selectman and the legal, our attorney have appealed the $100,000 cut that the Board of Finance made. That'll be the first item on our budget agenda on May 6th at 8:00 p.m. So they will talk about that more in detail, but feel free to ask as many questions as you want now. Are there any questions? I think Representative Ratsky has a question online.
Yes, Pierre Ratsky, District 10. So thank you for that. You mentioned that the last revision attempt did not succeed, and I think you mentioned some lessons that we can learn from that. Can you speak to that? Like, what would you say is the are the mistakes that happened with the last attempt, and what would you think we could do better this time?
I think it's a good question, and I probably cannot give you a complete answer at this time, but I think the biggest reason that it failed was that it was a single question on the ballot, and particularly how the question was worded. I think people who had been unaware of the process were skeptical when they read it and voted no reflexively. Typically, when a charter is being revised, you break up the question. I mean, one town recently had 10 questions. I mean, you can have lots of questions and they are specific to particular items. And when you do that, the voter will understand what it is that they're voting on. So to me, that's the biggest thing. I think that there are probably other aspects of the process that we could work on and improve. But like I said, the end product, most of it's not. I mean, it was an improvement on what we have currently from that commission. I think it's important for the members of the commission in a future commission to do independent work and make their own judgments. But, while the process may not have been perfect to get to the end product, I think the bigger issue was how it was put on the ballot.
May I?
Thank you.
May I jump in?
Sure, go ahead, First Selectman Gerber.
I followed that process very closely, and I think one of the more controversial, parts of that process was the first of, I forget how long it was, let's say it was 10 months, maybe it was even longer. But really the majority of the time was spent on really big, difficult issues like getting rid of the RTM, getting rid of the Board of Finance, becoming a mayor town council form of government. And there were many meetings with experts coming in, sort of talking about the different types of governments. And then once it was decided not to sort of get rid of the RTM, there were other major issues like minimum minority representation on the RTM by district and things like that, that really monopolized, I would say, at least 3/4 of the year. And it wasn't really until the last 4 meetings where some of the basic things that I think would have been really easy to put into the charter had they been broken out separately. Probably most of them would have passed. There are a couple items that maybe wouldn't have, but it was really rushed. I have no intention to ask anybody to try to bite off those big issues. I think this should be purely, if possible, unless someone else wants to run with something bigger, I wouldn't ask anyone to do anything other than make the document better for the existing form of government that we have.
Thank you. Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Hi, Phil. How are you? Could you speak to if we go ahead and add the 100,000 back into the budget versus in next fiscal year or in the fiscal year after that, can we now, is now the best time to build on the dollars already spent recently? We spent $350,000 on charter revision, right? And is it now, will we build on that and it'll be more current, relevant, able to capitalize on that money already spent? And could you clarify that number? Because I think it was 350,000 spent.
Frank, if he's on, probably has it. I thought it started with a 2, but it could be in the 3s.
Go ahead, Mr. McNeary.
Yeah, I'd have to do so much. I think it was closer in the 2 from what I pulled. That would just be the, I believe the bills for the attorneys. But that's, I think it's a lower number than that, but I'll have to get back to everybody. I don't have it at the top of my head.
I think there's probably some benefit to doing it now as opposed to waiting. But by and large, most of in my view, the only reason from that perspective is that if there are state laws that might affect us that would change, they have to incorporate, but that doesn't happen all that often. So I think the real impetus is that we haven't done it since 2006, and just because the last one failed doesn't mean we should just give up. We've got to do it. We've got to revise the charter and fix many of these provisions that are frankly, unworkable.
And then the goal to get it on the municipal ballot in 2025. That's a real push because there's more attention from the people who at the municipal level are aware. Is that one?
Yes. So that's something that we've talked about. And I think the sentiment is that people vote in the municipal elections that, are more informed about the municipal races. So it's a different demographic in terms of, not everyone votes in those races. So you're going to have a more informed voter. You'll probably have less voters that reflexively vote no to something like an omnibus question. Not that that's what should be on the ballot. So I think it has a higher probability of success on that ballot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Britton.
Peter Britton, District 1. I'd like to address the issue here of United Illuminating and the 200,000 and how confident you feel that that is sufficient. Could that go astronomically higher? Could it be lower? You've sort of estimated a number of hours, I assume, against that project, which came to the 200. Are you feeling confident that that will cover it? Or is this baby going to go to 500?
I think I feel confident that that number will cover it. And depending on how things play out, it could be a lot lower than that. I do not believe it would be a lot higher than that. I think the 200,000 is realistic. It's also conservative to a worst case kind of, because it assumes that we would need significant expert services, which we may not need. It depends on what happens next in the process. So one of the things that may happen is we may end up litigating the development and management plan before the siting council. If that happens, experts may be required. If there's a motion, if they try to start development while our appeal is pending, we may have to run into court on a motion to stay, which would require the presentation of expert evidence. The experts alone for that 2-month period that they were involved was $100,000. So the experts are pretty significant. One expert actually is working for free out of good, based on goodwill. But by and large, they're pretty expensive. But I think it's a reasonable estimate. I don't expect we would go over it.
Thank you, Representative Pistilli.
Thank you, Sharon Pistilli, District 5. I just wanted to understand, Representative Georgiadis asked some of my questions, but I wanted to clarify one of the reasons why it would be important for us to restore the 100,000 for the charter revision process now is if we start now, then the questions would end up on the municipal ballot, whereas last time they were on a state ballot. So it's sort of a mismatch where people got confused because it was a state election. We were voting on a municipal item. So that's part of it. And then in how many cases did we see like one question? So do we think we're going to have a better chance of passing multiple questions?
I think the Board of Selectmen sets the questions for the ballot. So I think lessons have been learned, and I think, that the board is going to not pass a one question ballot if we have a charter revision that results in, more than one proposed change to the charter, which is what I would expect.
May I say something?
Go ahead.
Just to be aware, we can all track it. There is a bill raised at that, in the House that it would be no longer legal to put all the questions into one question. And if that passes, then we won't be able to anyway. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Representative Zezma.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Liz Esma, District 4. Hey, Phil, nice to have you here. I really appreciate your comments on restoring the funds for a charter revision, and in particular because, as I understand, this whole effort to modernize town government really has never gotten off the ground, and the efficiencies that would bring are also cost savings. There's just too many benefits to let this opportunity go. So I very much appreciate your making that appeal and your support of that. Two items I just wanted to ask you about. Obviously, we are taking the general number up a bit, and what's that in anticipation of?
Well, that's really a reallocation of my perception of how the town's legal budget is being spent. I think there's a lot of work that was characterized as litigation previously that is not really litigation. It's really general work. I mean, it's not, the type of work has not changed really from, what has happened before. But, in my view, $13,000 for general work is not reflective of the work that's actually being performed. So this was my best estimate to try to break up how the money is being spent.
Okay, thanks. And that's why I can see a reduction in the litigation. Just reallocating funds amongst the various aspects of legal services.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Steele.
Thank you. Jeff Steele, District 3. Hey, Phil. Question on the budget and then a question on the appeal. In terms of the budget, so how do you divide out general and litigation? I know litigation is there a difference in amount paid for each of those functions? And as sort of a part to that question, are you, and I don't know the answer to this, are you paid a retainer? Is it hourly fees? And is that different from past town attorneys?
So the rates paid depend on the firm that provides the work. My firm is performing work on an hourly rate. Our rate's $250 an hour for all attorneys, regardless of experience. So just as an example, that's half my normal rate. For depending on the other work that's being done, it's the fees range from as low as, not counting insurance defense, but $200 to, $650, depending on who the lawyer is doing the work. The fill pile litigation, which is not paid out of the legal budget, those lawyers are billing, $600 an hour because it's specialized environmental litigation. And there's not really any municipal discount for that. It really just depends on the firm and the rates being done.
Okay, so so it's all hourly, obviously, right? As you said, it's not a retainer or anything. Is the hourly rate for litigation different than the hourly rate for general? You said it depends on the lawyer, the attorney used, right?
It depends on the firm. So, for example, if I'm doing general work versus litigation, the hourly rate's the same. If the matter is handled by, Robin Kaler's firm, they're billing at $300 an hour. So it just depends on which firm is performing the work. But the rates are, I sent to the Board of Finance a schedule of what the rates are. I can send that to.
Yeah, that'd be good. If you could, that'd be helpful, just so we understand that. And that's the same as it has been in past administrations in terms of town attorneys being compensated. Is it generally hourly?
As far as I know, I mean, Attorney Baldwin and Attorney Lesser, and I believe Attorney Sachs will all billed hourly. Fairfield has not done a retainer model for town attorney work.
Okay. Second question regarding the appeal. I mean, I agree, charter reform is necessary. I mean, there's no doubt. Obviously, what concerns me, there was a large handful of people in a bipartisan way went through this for 12 months. It is unfortunate it came out in one vote because undoubtedly someone's going to have an issue with one of the items, and I don't think that was the right way to do it personally. So if this is recast, are we, and maybe this is a question to First Selectman Gerber, are we just basically breaking it up to those questions separately? And that becomes the new charter reform. So we're going to go forward with, which we need to do. We need to go through each other. That's undoubtedly something we have to do. But are we just going to break that one omnibus bill or vote into several elements that were the components in the past? And if so, how much legal work does that entail? Or are we going to go back and look at a lot of things, Bill?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, if we were to break that omnibus question out, that would be a big improvement if most of those passed. But I think there are some real basic things that were missed. I don't know if you saw in the appeal letter, I put a few of them. One is, for example, how our internal auditor reports within the organization. Right now, they report to the administration. I believe that that's a bit fraught, that they should also have a very strong reporting line to the internal audit committee of the board. These are the things that I would ask for that I think would be good governance. There are issues about, as we know, with how compensation for like senior elected officials is calculated. I think that should be addressed to ensure that there's transparency around that. So there are other things that I think, actually there's a list of things that should be addressed. And I think Attorney Pierce may have some ideas as well. But there were so many things. I'll say another one. I don't know how we would address this, but I believe the Ethics Commission, there should be no majority of any party on the Ethics Commission. If there is a way to achieve that, I'm not sure if there is, but I'd like to see people talk about that. Looking at some of the other things that I wrote down, most of them actually were carryovers from the last process.
So most of them were.
Yeah. Most of them were, but I'm sure we'll get a good group of hopefully apolitical or people in the room. Hopefully a lot of them will be lawyers and really attuned to municipal government, and will come up with ideas. I'd be pretty upset if they went down a rabbit hole on the form of government, because I think that was also part of the demise of the last one.
Yeah, I'm sure there were some elements of that would have been approved if they were put before the voters separately. There's no doubt. There was a lot of work, a lot of time and work put into that. And I just hope, as Representative Georgiadis brought up, hopefully a lot of that will still be used, because people put a lot of time into that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think most of the things that I laid out in my list were directly from the last version. So I believe some of those were so basic that they will definitely be just picked up without much change.
Will a new committee be formed with new members, or there'll be some carryover members?
I really don't know. Haven't really started talking about that
nothing
yet.
against any of the members. I'm just wondering if a new, fresh perspective, or do we bring back the others if they even want to come back? Because
Well, that's the thing. There were a couple people that I thought, behaved really well, and were pretty nonpartisan. And but I doubt they'd want to do it again. I think some of them are shell shocked a little bit, but we might ask. We might ask a couple.
Okay. I think that answers my question, but it still comes back to, if we are going to rehash the same issues, which is fine, but break them up, that may not entail another $100,000. That's all.
The last one was, I believe, more than 200,000. I think it should definitely be much less than last time. Whether 100 is the right number, it's kind of hard to say. But I think it's kind of given what we saw last time, it's not unreasonable to put that in there. I would hope it would end up being less.
Thanks. Did you have something?
Well, I think it's also important that the commission feels it has access to resources if they want an issue researched. So, while I think a lot of what came out of the last commission was very good and there's a good starting point, there are, in addition to what Bill identified, there's a number of other provisions that weren't addressed. I mean, sometimes when I'm asked to interpret something from a, member on a board, I go and look at the charter, the revised charter, and it wasn't, this provision wasn't touched and it's difficult to interpret. And
I agree. There's a lot that's missing. It's riddled with areas that need improvement and gaps to be filled without a doubt. So I agree with what you said. We can't just give up and forget it. I mean, it has to be addressed. We can't just let it lie. So if this is the best way, individually, I think makes the most sense because we've seen the other way doesn't work, then, I would be in favor of that. It just, the 100,000 is a little concerning.
Thank you, Representative Shea.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Chris Shea, District 2. Attorney Pierce, thank you for being here tonight. A couple of quick questions. Going back to the United Illuminating budget line item, I believe that since this budget was created, the city of Bridgeport has joined in that lawsuit. And I'm wondering if they're going to participate in obviously in the cost of that litigation. Would that maybe lower this amount of money that might be required?
so I don't think so. So they filed a separate appeal. The appeals will all be consolidated. So they are separate court cases, but they will be consolidated before a single judge. Their participation was later in the process before the citing council and was to a much lesser extent. They presented no witnesses at the citing council. I mean, the town had, witnesses at the citing council. So it'd be nice if we can partner with them and get financial support for our experts. I don't think to date we've gotten that kind of acknowledgement of a contribution from them. So they, I think, have their own strategy for how they're pursuing their opposition. There's definitely going to be coordination on, some strategy and settlement for sure, but I don't think that that's going to defray the cost that we've projected.
Thank you. And then my second question, it looks like the budget for this year, 24, is significantly lower than the actuals for 23 and 22. And I'm wondering if we have a tracking on where we actually are going to finish out 24 with.
Hey, Frank, do you know what the actuals for legal expenses are for last year and this year?
So the one thing that as Frank's looking for the number, the Board of Finance did a line item transfer for this current fiscal year to add 500,000 to the budget related to UI. That at the time there was somewhere in the $200,000 to $300,000 of actual spent dollars, and that projected money through the end of the fiscal year. So the all-in number at the end of the year may be higher based on the UI case, which was unanticipated at the time that this budget was made. As for why this budget is lower than the others, I think it's just, it didn't have charter revision. There were certain, probably a slight lull in terms of court cases and things like that. Bill Powell's paid not out of this budget. It's paid out of a different budget.
Thank you. Go ahead, Frank.
Year to date, actual expended is 820,000. Like Phil said, the budget was revised to be 1.065 million. Last year was 742,000. The year before that was 741,000.
This is, part of the problem of looking at budgets, because there was transfers. Do you remember when Jim Baldwin was town attorney, there was a pretty sizable transfer into legal?
Okay, so the budget number in our book here on page 76 for fiscal year 24 is indicated at 565,000, but we actually moved a $500,000 and more into that budget, so it's closer to 1.2 million.
It's closer to 1.1 million.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Attorney Pierce or on this item? Representative Astorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. And really, what I have to say is more of a comment and really a challenge to Mr. Gerber and Mr. Becker, because we've heard a couple of things already. I think we would all agree that charter reform is probably something that's necessary and needs to be done, but we also heard that we could probably use a couple of additional police officers, which would, potentially be about $300,000. So I would challenge, you two gentlemen to go back to this budget and see if you can find, cut someplace to allow us to be able to reform the charter and add a couple of additional police officers.
Can I respond to that?
Just go ahead, Representative.
Yeah, I just want to make it very clear. People have been pushing the police to hire more people. They never asked for more police. So where they came and asked us for headcount was in the ECC. Really from the beginning of the budget process, on my side, I never once heard an ask for additional police. It wasn't until we went to the Board of Selectmen meeting where Selectwoman Kupchik said, I think you need more police. And, obviously people are going to ask the police, do they want more people? They're probably going to say, sure. But just want you to know that that was never even discussed in any of our meetings, not even a hint.
I understand that and I appreciate it. And it sounds to me like these individuals are extremely conscious, budget conscious and trying to do the right thing. But, I would just say for instance, the Board of Education has no problem coming in here and asking for a 5.8% increase to an over $210 million budget. So maybe sometimes we need to look at exactly where we're increasing, and maybe we can apportion a little bit more perhaps to the police department, in this case also getting charter revision approved.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment that we cannot, as a body, add any money to the police budget this budget season, just because we can only add money to the budget if it was cut from the Board of Selectmen budget by the Board of Finance, and that the department head appeals to us. And they have a certain 10-day time window to appeal to us. So the only add we can do this budget season is the $100,000 to the legal budget, and it needs to be a 2/3 majority vote. Are there any other questions or concerns?
And again, just one more point. So the big topic for police, I think, as was mentioned, was the dispatch center and adding resources there. And we met for many hours and discussed this and has spent a significant amount of work trying to achieve what the police and fire wanted to achieve. And we've added significant headcount to that. So in terms of, investing in public safety, a lot of that was working with the police, because that's really what they wanted to do. So maybe I don't want anyone to think that we haven't made a huge commitment. I think it's a very sizable commitment to public safety through restructuring the ECC and adding staff and bringing back a police captain. So going from 3 to 4 captains in the police is a pretty big deal.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Becker.
Not much more to that, but just with that captain coming back is going to involve them doing some reorganization of their overall flow chart. So during the discussions, that was a big item that they, when they met with us, that was going to be an important step. It was not only bringing the body back, but then also making those organizational adjustments and then having those, obviously that takes a little bit of time to then sit and understand the new function and then what their needs will be within that. And just to reiterate, we will absolutely be looking at ways that we can help them speed up on the hiring process. And there's a couple of different items we have offline talked about and also at the Board of Finance that came up related to that. So again, hearing it here, certainly not a ton of things in our toolkit at this stage, to the moderator's point, but message received, and we'll do our best to work on that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Walk, you have a question on the legal budget? We got a little off topic, so I'm going to stick to the legal budget right now. So we got a little bit off. Anyone have a question on the legal budget? I actually have a question about how much do you provide towards the RTM? Like, do you have a number that you provide of hours to the RTM? Is that figured in there?
It's really based on requests from the RTM. So I did not, as I put this together in my mind, project a number for the RTM. That would be something that would be subsumed in the general number, just like any other board or commission that asks for legal services. So, but I'm happy to assist with ordinances or obviously answer legal questions as they come up.
So none of that's broken out anywhere in the budget. We wouldn't be able to find that.
No, I didn't project that separately.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Attorney Perry. Oh.
One quick point. One
Go
of the
ahead.
things I hope the Charter Revision Commission would look at is giving the RTM the ability to ask for independent legal representation if they feel they need it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you, Attorney Perry. So we're all set, and we'll see you at the budget meeting, first item on the agenda. We're going to call up the fire. Chief McCarthy and Deputy Chief Dunn are here to talk about the fire item on our budget that is on page 132. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having us tonight. I'll give a brief overview of the fire department budget. In addition to the fire department budget, we represent the emergency management budget, water and hydrants, as well as the regional fire school. So I'll provide a brief overview and then be available to answer questions. The fire department budget represents an investment in public safety and protection of quality of life in Fairfield. I want to note that the budget supports our amazing staff of 100 women and men who work to carry out the mission of the fire department every day, and their work is extraordinary. The budget drivers, significant increases, are a result of the settlement of the collective bargaining agreement, which resulted in salary increases and increases in staffing by adding 4 firefighters in our minimum manpower contingent, which will increase staff from 23 firefighters on duty to 24. Additionally, the budget represents an addition of 8 lieutenant positions by promotion with no new headcount. These officers will supervise our ladder and rescue trucks. Additionally, funding is in the budget increase for apparatus maintenance. There's additional funding for training, and our capital budget, which was reduced by $75,000 by the Board of Finance, is an important investment in maintenance of all of our equipment and the addition of important resources like turnout gear. There are some significant headwinds and challenges for the department in the upcoming year. As you all have recognized, there's an increase in mid-rise residential housing, and this places a significant demand on manpower in the department on each and every response. And it increases the time that our units are engaged in service at those locations. There's been a steady increase in calls for service, especially in EMS, which represents 66% of our entire call load annually. There are increases in calls for service for assisted living facilities, simultaneous calls for service, where there's overlapping calls, stretches our ability to respond and lengthens our response time, and certainly is an issue that we are adjusting to every day and is part of this budget. increasing or anticipated demands from changes in OSHA and the requirements on the department as they rewrite their standards for the first time in 40 years will have an impact on the department in the upcoming year. Calls for service for medically fragile and aging population is an important consideration for the department as we strive to preserve independent living in our community and provide extraordinary services all hours of the day to make sure that our senior and medically fragile residents have the service of the department so they can maintain living at home independently. Over the course of the year, onboarding requirements for new employees beyond the basic recruit training will be an important part of the training budget, as will training for new officers. Increased flooding and weather emergencies impact our emergency surge capacity and for staffing, and those numbers and expenditures go up annually. Our apparatus maintenance challenges, all of our equipment and certainly all of your vehicles that you drive every day, you recognize they're highly dependent on advanced systems and computers. This increases the cost of maintenance and stretches our repair times. So there are increases in our maintenance budget to deal with those costs and impacts. And the cancer bill that received a lot of attention over the past couple of years, we're fortunate the state legislature passed it, does require us to pay attention to equipment, turnout gear, policies, procedures, and training to reduce the frequency of exposure to carcinogens by our personnel and hopefully reduce the number of occurrences. And lastly, and I convey this as often as I can, the most dangerous environment that we send our personnel to is on I-95. You noticed last year that we had a vehicle strike on the highway by an intoxicated driver at an emergency scene. Fortunately, the damage to our equipment was not too severe, but $50,000 worth of damage to our equipment. Alternatively, the result could have been loss of life by a number of our responders. We're particularly concerned about the hazards that I-95 and the Merritt Parkway pose to us, and how we deal with that is we send more equipment up, provide blocking systems so that we create a safe work zone for our personnel, police, EMS, and the folks involved in the original accident. So there is a lot on our plate this coming year, and the budget reflects many of those changes that I have described. The payroll and overtime increases, I will rely on Frank Magneri to speak to because of the impact of multiple years of retroactive pay as part of the contract settlement. And with that, I'll pause and open up for questions.
Ms. Magneri, do you want to speak anything to the increase, or want to just wait for questions?
I'll just direct everybody to a summary of the collective bargaining agreement that I included in the budget book. It's found on the page that begins with the fire department. I included the outcome of that collective bargaining agreement, and I think that would be good to look at before, because it could answer a lot of questions, and happy to answer any that there are.
Do you know what page that was on? 132 and 133. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yeah, it starts on page 132 under the budget summary. It's the right column, and it ends on page 133.
Thank you. Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Thank you guys for coming, and thanks for all your hard work. You deserve as many thank yous and kudos as anyone that works for the town. You had mentioned fire hydrants, but I don't see it in here. And have we discussed that yet? Because I have a question about that.
No, I just noted that there are 4 budgets that we represent, fire and water, fire, hydrants and water is part of our responsibility to manage that budget.
You can ask that question.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot about infrastructure in the town, that it's, WW2 era. We've been, as the RTM, have been approving a lot of money for upgrades for infrastructure. Do the fire hydrants also, are they at the end of their life, the piping that gets the water to the hydrant? Would that be in a capital plan and not an annual budget, or how does that work?
So they're taken care of by Aquarian, a private company. So we pay sort of rental. It's almost like a utility bill that we pay. The rates are set by Pura, and we pay based on 14 million inch feet of pipe and 1,578, I think, hydrants that we have in the town. So we pay a rate based on that.
That's good news. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, and they're also very progressive in changing mains. They've done a lot of construction. They analyze constantly, and they work with us very well, from the higher ups in the company to the people that are out in the street that are working at the hydrants. They're very, very, they work very well with the fire department.
That's great to hear because it's a safety issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pistilli.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, Sharon Pistilli, District 5. So I just wanted to say thank you for the tours of the department that we received. I got to go 45 feet in the air in a bucket. Yeah, my friends at work were very impressed.
And the moderator looked very good in turnout gear.
Thank you. So I had 3 questions. One is the increased staffing levels. Is that bringing us now to the point where there's going to be a lieutenant, a commanding lieutenant in every vehicle, every truck?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then is there equipment that you haven't asked for that you'd like to ask for? Like, one thing that concerns me is with all the increase in lithium batteries, like you hear about in the city, people using e-bikes and e-scooters, and then they blow up in apartment buildings. So is there anything?
So the evolving technology of lithium-ion batteries is certainly one that has us very concerned. We are watching carefully experiences in our region, in the state, and across the country. We're advocating for changes in state law and the fire code to provide safety measures, particularly in single-family residence where there's an attached garage, and there may be a power system, battery storage, or charging units in the garage. There are no detection systems required by the state building or fire codes in single-family dwelling garages. So those are the types of things that we're working on right now. We're doing a lot in public education, have developed some videos for public distribution. Hopefully you've seen that on our website and Facebook page. In addition, we are buying equipment to, if there is a failure of a lithium-ion battery in a car, to be able to prevent that from spreading, because extinguishment is extremely difficult. So try to contain the fire to the vehicle of origin, and cell block material that allows us to dispose of batteries that have malfunctioned so they don't present a further hazard. So we're keeping up, but certainly I would expect that this would impact us as we gain more experience with the hazard, that it would affect future budgets.
Okay, thank you. And then one other thing, when we visited the Jennings Road firehouse, we saw like the limited space for the maintenance facilities. And so this might be a capital planning question, I guess. So only if it's quick, otherwise I'm going to get in trouble.
It is part of our ongoing discussions with the administration to address apparatus maintenance. It takes up a big footprint at Station 2, and either we need to build an addition at Station 2 or move that operation to another location. And we're having discussions about that with other departments as well.
And what's the timeline, do you think, on that, just in general? Because it seems like we can't even maintain a truck like inside the garage because there's no room. So the mechanic has to be outside, like in the rain.
I would hope that in the next capital budget process that we would have a proposal.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Zezima.
Liz Esma, District 4, thank you guys, and the tour was great. I did not get a ride in the bucket. I just want to say that for the record.
Anytime.
Again, capital, not budget, but my question is if we, if you have any concerns about this budget, your fire boat is slated for replacement, I think it's 2026, and do you feel confident that you can wait until then?
Yeah, so we have in the capital budget our second boat, which is staffed with on-duty personnel. So it's not permanently staffed, but Station 4 personnel in Southport go to Yee Yacht Yard when an emergency is called in. And we would hope that in 26, and we have projected, that's our projection for replacement in 2026. So I'm confident that we can make it to that date. And I'm comfortable with the plan as we've presented it in the capital budget.
Great, thank you, and thanks for all you do for the town. Really appreciate it.
Well, we represent 100 people who do that work every day, and I want to give them credit for their work.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, Representative Steele?
Thank you, Jeff Steele, District 3. First of all, thank you to you both and your entire department. Like the police department, you perform a hugely valuable and prized and crucial role here in town, so we appreciate that. And also thank you for the tour as well. I was part of that. Nothing like seeing Marcy dressed up in full gear with an oxygen mask. It's kind of like every RTM meeting, I guess, with that oxygen mask. Two questions. The only two things that kind of pop out to me, one is on the lieutenants. So is that a new mandate? I know I've heard there's a lot of discussion on this issue. Is it a town mandate? Is it a state mandate? Or is it just a new process and procedure? And then secondly, prior to that happening, who kind of took charge on a truck, or how did that work out? And was that not smooth?
So this is an initiative, certainly it's a best practice, and it's recognized in the standards as a best practice. So having supervision is an important consideration. I'll direct you to two environments, or two calls, recent calls. Kingsway Motor Fire. Firefighters on the ladder truck are responsible to go up on the roof and create holes in the roof for ventilation, allow the heat and smoke to escape, and allows firefighters to go in and make extinguishment without an officer as part of that company. And the same was true of the fire in Southport, a roof fire in Southport. We're sending firefighters unsupervised, without a supervisor, to go up on the roof. Normally, they act as part of a response team. There's an assistant chief, there are other lieutenants on the scene, but where they work, and the hazards that they are encountering are significant enough that it requires supervision. The other environment is on I-95. The rescue truck, so that's the ladder truck. The rescue truck goes up to I-95, may be there before anybody else. I talked about simultaneous calls for service. The engine with the lieutenant could be at another call. And that rescue truck with 3 firefighters and no supervisor could be at that scene. Again, the level of hazard is significant, and as I stated, is probably the most significant environment, most dangerous environment that we send our firefighters to. It is for those reasons that supervision on the rescue and the ladder truck is so important. And this does not include, this request is just converting a firefighter to a lieutenant. So we're promoting existing staff to a supervisory position. It's not a new headcount.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question is, and I guess this kind of pops more than any of the others, is the percent increase. I see 206% of training. And Just so I know what that is, if I look back, 25,000, 25, 25, 37.5, and all of a sudden it goes to 115, 206% increase. I saw that police went from 100 to 115. Is that 115 that magic number? Is it a coincidence, or is it, how does it go from 37.5 to 115? What are the elements of it, just so I understand?
So the 37.5 is our contribution to the regional fire school. That's the base number in there, and that's why it's been the same year over year. It started out as when we created the standalone budget for the regional fire, self-supporting budget for the regional fire school. A decision was made, and we advocated for the town of Fairfield to, in the fire department budget, to pay for the overhead cost of operating the facility, to keep the lights on and the heat on. And that started out at $25,000. It's gone up to 37.5. So that's the change in the base number that you see year over year in that. And some of the issues that I described, the challenges that we have this year are training for new firefighters that we're bringing on, the additional 8 new firefighters that are part of the collective bargaining agreement, the onboarding of 8 new officers, as well as the OSHA requirements that we expect to change, that will change and impact us and have significant training obligations. That drove that increase from 37.5 to 115. And that is the purpose of that. And it's coincidental that the number is equivalent.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on this item? Seeing none, thank you. I just want to say thank you guys for all your service and for the department's service. I see it firsthand frequently when I'm out at work and how you help the elderly stay in their houses. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
We're going to move on to purchasing, page 107. I believe Adam Tulin, the director of purchasing, is online. Mr. Tulin, if you could unmute yourself and give us a little summary of this budget item, which is on page 107.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
All right, great. I'm having a hard time getting my camera to turn on. Is it okay if we're just audio here?
That works fine.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having me. Happy to be here for my second year now. There's not a whole lot to this budget. It's, with the exception of salaries, it's basically flat from last year. I'm happy to report that we are fully staffed now, which is a change from this time a year ago. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what efficiencies we can create as a department now. I view us really as an internal service department. We're here to help all the other departments reach their goals. So I'm looking forward to the year ahead. If there's any specific questions about the payroll or anything, I'm sure Frank could assist with that, or I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding purchasing? Seeing none, thank you so much for waiting online, Mr. Tulin. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the town tax assessor, Ross Murray, page 111. There you are, Mr. Murray. Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'll start in. The budget is pretty much flat except for 2 items. The first being the IT software line, and that increase is actually due to moving the one of our contracts for aerial images from fees and professional services. Plus that was 18,000, and the rest of the increase was due to contractual increases to our maintenance contracts for software. And then the other item is the $225,000 increase to fees and professional services. That is primarily due to budgeting for the revaluation, which is scheduled to start this spring in the fiscal year 24 budget and continue through the next 2 fiscal years, actually. So we've budgeted 250,000 for that, 150 more than last year. I'm sorry, 200 more than last year. And there's a couple of supporting services that's also included in there. That's a sketch check feature that we're going to be using along with the aerial that was just performed by the MetroCog, and they will review our sketches against that aerial and find any discrepancies. And also in there is funding for new street level images of all the properties in town. Happy to answer any questions at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Are there any questions regarding our budget line item for the assessor? Representative Carroll, is that you have a question?
That was our previous presenter, but I'll
Oh, I'm
follow it, so-
sorry.
That's okay. I was late on the process, so do not worry.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Murray. Appreciate you waiting online.
No, thank you very much.
We're going to move on to the tax collector, Mr. Kluswiski. I hope I said that right. He's online, page 160.
Kluzewski.
Thank you. If you just
All right,
want
good
to-
evening, everyone. Just for anyone that's unfamiliar with my operations in my office, or if you've never met me or been in a budget session with me, I just wanted to say that the tax collector's office, we are a high volume customer service driven department. We handle over 187,000 payment transactions annually. We collect over 300 million in revenue for the town, equating to over 90% of all revenue generated by the town. And I'm very proud to say that my staff has maintained a very healthy collection rate of approximately 99% for over 3 years in a row now, and while maintaining superb customer service for all the taxpayers in Fairfield. So with that said, the primary driver on the expenditure portion of my budget is the salary line due to contractual rate and step increases. Any remaining increases are minimal, more inflationary related to critical functions such as the printing and mailing of over 80,000 tax bills.
Thank you.
And with that, I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Representative Walk.
Jay Walk, District 5. Hey, David.
Hi, Jay.
Good to see you. I just have basically a comment, and plus just want to ask, so your office, since the cut back, I'm understanding that you're okay now, and that you're working at full capacity, answering the phones and all that stuff, which I'm glad
Yes.
to
So that was in 2017. A couple years ago, through a discussion with the WPCA, they had a vacancy for their sewer clerk. And what we determined, or what I felt was a good solution, was to bring in the portions of the sewer clerk position that dealt with the sewer billing into the tax collector's office, so that the residents kind of have like a one-stop shopping type experience, where when they get their sewer bill and they don't understand why it's so high, if there's a complication with their sewer bill because it's based on consumption, prior practice was, okay, well, we just collect the bill. We can't help you. You have to go to the next building and find out why your bill calculated so high. So we brought those functions into the office, where the extra position is funded 80% WPCA, 20% tax. The individual is trained in both WPCA and tax. It's worked out really well, because now residents come in with their sewer bill. They have questions. Everything is answered in the tax office. They can get their questions answered. They can pay their tax bill. They don't have to go to numerous departments. And like I said, this individual is trained in both sewer and tax. So they're primarily doing sewer functions, but at the most busiest times, like say July for taxes, we have an individual assisting us in the office, covering the functions that we previously were missing when the position was cut.
Thanks, David. I just want to thank you for everything that you do for it also. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. So I had a couple of questions. One is, there seems to be quite a bit of fluctuation on the interest that we're collecting on delinquent taxes. Is the increase due to an increase in interest rates that we're allowed to charge, or did we have a higher percentage of delinquency?
And are you referring to this year or just the last couple of years?
Yeah, so do you see the lump, like in 21, it was 1.8, and then 22 was
Okay.
4, and then we're back down in the ones, and then now
Yes. Okay.
projected it's creeping up back up again.
Yeah. So it's a combination of a couple things. In 2021, we had a property that had a very large delinquency, a single property that had a very large delinquency that was sold, and then the taxes and the large amount of interest that was due was obviously paid in full at the time of sale. And then just in general, overall, due to the the post-COVID housing market, that we had a lot of longtime delinquents either just ultimately sell their properties or drawing a blank here, refinance. They refinance, and then they were able to just pay off their debts and the taxes. And then so a lot of it was that. And then the decrease can be attributed to the fact that we now have a lot of new owners in town that are just paying their taxes on time, whereas the delinquent, they have since sold and moved out.
So then, but the projection for next year goes back up again. So why is that?
Goes back up, yes. So that is because right now we are in the process of doing a tax sale, and there is plans to potentially do one next year. So typically, if we're going to project a higher amount on interest, it's because we are planning on doing some type of tax sale foreclosure action that would allow us to, kind of not just, it allows us to just guarantee that, okay, if we do a tax sale, we should be able to get this much in interest.
Okay, thanks. And then one other thing, is there any plan to like repay taxes quarterly, right? Is that like typical? Are we going to keep going paying taxes quarterly? Are we going to change that schedule?
For real estate, there is no immediate plan to change the number of installments from quarterly to, say, biannual. There is discussions for changing the motor vehicle taxes from semi-annual to annual. Over 150 towns in the state of Connecticut collect their motor vehicle taxes in one annual installment rather than semi-annual. And it is something that we're considering, and obviously it would be less of a financial impact than modifying the real estate installments.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to clarify on that, actually. So we will be voting on changing the car taxes from twice a year to one time a year at our budget vote. That's something that's part of the resolution to vote on. And this year, the wording is changed. I believe I forwarded it to everyone here. So can you explain to us a little bit more about why we will be voting on that and why you want to switch it from 2 times to 1 time a year?
Sure. So as I stated, we're only one of 20 towns across the state that collects it in that manner. The other 150 or so collect it once a year. Motor vehicle taxes, it's a fraction of what we collect in revenue overall. So we're talking, maybe 20 million of the 320 million that we collect. It's also collected in arrears. So what that means is we're billing you for your car tax this coming July 2024, but it's based on a car that you registered way back in October, that was registered in your name as of the previous October of 2023. So as it is, you're getting a bill in July, almost 10 months later, but then you're going to owe this second installment in January, almost 15 months later. So it's just making the process more efficient, easier to understand. We have a lot of residents that just, they get rid of a car, and based on when they get rid of it, they still have a hard time believing that, well, I still have to pay a portion in January when they're also paying for a tax bill for the car that the new car they just got and swapped out for their old car. So it's a very confusing process to delay the taxes and break it into 2 installments like that. It's a very, I don't want to minimize it, but it's obviously a much smaller dollar amount than, say, a real estate tax. On average, most motor vehicle taxes are either $500 to $1,000. And, whether it's real estate taxes, motor vehicle taxes, we're doing one mailing with all the bills included. So you get your real estate bill on 2 pages with all 4 installments included in July. We're not, spending postage 4 times a year, sending bills 4 times. So what happens with the motor vehicle, we send 1 bill, 2 bill coupons due July and January. I'm finding that anywhere between 68 to 70% of all taxpayers are paying in full in July anyways. 1, because of the lower dollar amount, and 2, because of this concern that they're going to forget to pay in January because they don't receive another bill in January. So in my mind, it's almost it's like cleaning up a process that almost seems to be happening anyways. So the feeling is, well, why don't we just make it 1 installment, because most residents are paying in that manner anyways. And then there's just, other things that, because we're collecting twice a year, it increases the amount of payment volume my office is taking in, my personnel, the amount of phone calls we're receiving. So we're looking to bring down that volume a little bit so that we can offer better services. So the hope is that we may have less overpayments, less refunds to issue. Refunds can take anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks, because it is a statutory process where I have to bring it to the Board of Selectmen for approval. And then it has to go to our finance department for them to process and cut checks. And we're trying to minimize the amount of refunds we have, but also the time frame that it takes for us to process those refunds. And then just mail returns. We get a lot of tax bills get returned from the post office. So we want to be able to devote more time to finding out, okay, where is this bill? Where should it go? Trying to get it out to our residents in a timely fashion, before it is considered late. Because unfortunately, with property taxes governed by state statute, state law says that, whether you receive the bill or not, you are liable. So if someone forgets to pay, or they forgot to put a forwarding address at the post office, they just forgot to do a change of address with the DMV. If they do not receive their bill, and then the deadline passes, we have to charge them interest no matter what. So we'd like to be able to research these bills in a faster manner and get it out to them. But the main reasoning is, like I said, the numbers say that a lot of people are paying once a year anyways. And it seems to be a system that's effective because of how confusing the car tax schedule can be, and the fact that people often are, selling cars, changing cars every couple of years. And like I said, the fact that over 150 towns do collect their car taxes once a year. So it seems to be a process that works statewide.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask you to speak for Selectman Gerber.
So just from my perspective, and having known David for several years and talked to him for several years, it's a pretty well-run shop that he has there, pretty efficient. Anything that we can do within reason to reduce the peak work times that are not necessary. So if you've ever been to the tax office during, the quarterly real estate tax payment times, or during, even personal property tax times, you'll see lines out the door. They're basically all consumed with that process. It's no less of a process each one of the 4 times for real estate than it would be for 2. You would just eliminate 2 of those days, and the amount of work that you do twice a year for car tax, it's multiplied times 2 as well. So you could cut that amount of peak activity in half for car tax, and still be in the vast majority of what people, what towns in Connecticut do. I really did want to look at a transition for real estate tax, but the problem is that real estate tax is collected in advance. And if you were to make a transition from 4 a year to 2, in effect, you'd be collecting 3 quarters within a 1-quarter period, because you'd pay the final quarter of the month, and then in advance, in the beginning of the following year, you'd be paying 2 quarters. And I think we realized, and having discussed with several people, that would be a hardship for a lot of people. So there may be a way that we can transition into a semi-annual real estate collection over time, but we haven't worked through the details on that. Since this is in arrears, this can be done relatively easily with a minimum amount of pain.
Thank you. Representative Pacilli, did you have all your questions answered? Great. Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. I just want to say thank you. I go into your office and pay my taxes, and everyone's smiling, and they're so friendly and helpful. So aside from the fact that I'm delivering a check, it's a really great experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we always say that, some people treat going to the tax office like going to the dentist if they hate going to the dentist. It's always this, this mind-numbing experience that you want to avoid, but you can't avoid because no one can avoid taxes. But I'm very fortunate my office tries to change that stigma. And they do, amazing job of putting a smile on everyone's faces.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding this item? Seeing none, thank you so much for everything you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to IT. David Kelly's online on the WebEx, page 124.
Good evening, everybody. This year's IT budget is largely a maintenance budget continuation of last year, with a couple of notable items, such as included in my budget summary. We are using a very old version of Adobe Acrobat Standard for editing PDF documents, and we need to replace that this year with either a subscription to Adobe's newer software or perhaps an alternative. Also, each year we add a little more to our security posture here in town. So there's a piece of software that we're also requesting to enhance the monitoring capabilities of our systems. Lastly, one thing that I'm always doing when I'm trying to prepare a budget is estimate what our future software licensing and maintenance costs are going to be. Typically, software costs go up slightly faster than inflation. And this past year, inflation has been very high, relatively speaking. And speaking with my colleagues in some other towns, they're experiencing significant cost increases, more than the 3 to 5% that we would normally estimate. So that is also reflected in the IT software line. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly? Representative Colburn.
Thank you, Colin Colburn, District 8. One question about the website, because I was reading through the summary, and obviously I think many of us know that there was a new website launched this year. How has that gone in terms of complaints that we may have seen, or the reduction in people having to call into town hall? Just want to get a sense for how successful that has been.
It's a mixed bag. It's a new website. It's a bit more modern, has a lot more features and functionality than our prior website had. That's a good thing to some people. It's a bad thing to some people. Some people like the new website. Some people hate the new website. But by and large, it is a newer, more modern website, and all the content is out there. We have had some concerns regarding our ticketing system, our customer service reporting system. And we are addressing that. We're looking to change that. The one that came with the new website is not quite as robust as the one that we had in the old website, but we are looking to correct that. But by and large, there's some growing pains getting a new website up and running, but I would actually put it to you. How do you feel about the new website?
It is part of my domain with my professional life. I think it's good. I think there are some user experience flaws that happy to talk about that offline if you want. But I think overall, cosmetically, I think it's better. And I do think overall it does, I think at least it guides our residents to something that's usable for most of them to be able to use for things that they probably would have had to call before, had to go to the town hall.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Kelly? First, Selectman Gerber.
I think Dave's being modest about the work that he's doing now on the ticketing system. That is a big priority. We've been meeting on it. We all know that there's been frustration on the part of both users, residents, and department heads, and Dave is leading the charge to fix that. In order to be efficient as a town, especially with our focus on traffic safety, pedestrian, bike safety, we're going to need to be able to funnel the many complaints that we get regarding that, and receiving individual emails and getting phone calls is not efficient. We want to have a system where people feel comfortable logging those and they're directly routed to the appropriate department. And then, any work that's done or any progress is automatically, it goes back in status comments, to the resident that entered it in. So that's a big priority, and thank you, Dave, for taking the lead on that.
Thank you, Representative Carson.
Hi, Laura Carson, District 4. There was talk about the computer, laptops and desktops, and there was talk about getting to a point where maybe you just go to one computer for your employees. Can you just explain to us where you are in that particular process? I know there was some software that can't be carried on the laptop that was discussed at the Board of Finance meetings, and so you have people, it's costing, to have both. And I'm just wondering, are you making a move to actually incorporate just one computer per employee, or limiting the amount, or where we are? Thank you.
Well, no, not so far, not at this time. Laptops are assigned to employees based on a department head's need. So this did come up during the Board of Finance meeting, but we have not made any change yet.
Are you going to try to make that change, or are you just going to leave it as status quo?
We just haven't discussed it internally yet, what we're going to do there.
Thank you.
May I respond to that? While some people really focused heavily on that, that is not really a major. That doesn't even rank in the top 100 things that we're looking at right now. So it's on the list of things to discuss, and we have discussed it, but it's a really minor expense. It's not a lot of people, and most of the people who do have a laptop have justified it. So the part of it is, if we're going to write a policy that would be universal and say you have to do it this way or do it that way. In the past, people have tried, it's case by case. People have justified what they need, and if it can be justified, and if the department head signs off on it, if it looks reasonable, I think it's gone through. But it's just not a matter of taking those things away, because in some instances both are warranted. So we're going to have a policy, and haven't gotten to that yet.
So thank you for clarifying that it's a minor expense. From the discussion, it sounded more of a bigger expense. No one really clarified that. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a discussion on, whether or not someone should have one monitor or two monitors.
And I know the monitors are nothing.
Monitors are, it could be a couple $100, but that's another thing where, yeah, people do have two monitors and they've justified them. It's kind of easy usually to justify having two monitors if you're, looking at a bunch of different large documents at one time. I don't think anyone in the past has gone through and said that was not justified. And I would say just because a few people don't like the idea and they don't necessarily work in the departments where people are using or have experienced that way, it's to me it seems like something that shouldn't just be given out. But if it could be justified with the type of work that someone does, then they should probably be able to get it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding this item? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. We appreciate everything you do for the town.
Thank you.
We're moving on to finance, page 98. Is that you, Mr. Becker?
Yes, also Frank can certainly step in. If anybody has any questions on the expense side. Don't have too much as far as highlights. It's pretty simple. Most of the adjustments on the expense side are in salary and part-time salary lines. And there's an adjustment related to, we're certainly in the process of hiring a new permanent CFO, so there's adjustments there. And then there's some part-time adjustments, and that was just to bring things back closer to the actual numbers those lines are tracking at, and then the rest are contractual.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the finance budget line? Representative Steele.
Thank you, Jeff Steele, District 3. I just have one question just regarding the CFO role. I guess where are you at in terms of filling that? And my second question is, and I don't know if I brought it up earlier, but I'm just curious how it does go from 151,000 to 190,000. 25% increase, pretty significant, with past CFOs not being paid certainly more than 150, and a couple of them having, Fortune 500 corporate experience. So, yeah.
This is really just the market going out and looking at, to get someone of the caliber that we need. And that the market, the range that we came up with or that HR came up with was 170 to 190. I don't think I'd feel comfortable comparing to past CFOs for a number of reasons. I think what we, because coming in, I'm seeing significant deficits, and I don't know why they're there in terms of the types of processes and systems, but we need somebody who's really seasoned and has a, sort of a real command of the skills in order to actually modernize that department. And so, we're just looking at the market. I don't want to overpay for sure, but I also don't want to pay for someone who is not ready to step in and really lead that department, because ultimately we are going to save exponential amount of money for the errors, mistakes, issues by avoiding them in the future. So that's the way I look at it. That's why I'm asking for, we don't want to overpay, but we are looking at what's it going to take to get somebody, and we are looking around and seeing what many of our neighboring towns have and the type of reputations that those people have. So we're not sort of really talking to people with minimal, that are taking a big leap up. This is more of a hopefully a lateral move, or yeah.
As with other positions we try to fill, we often do sort of comps with other towns. Are there other towns in this range, 190,000?
Well, yeah, they're definitely the seasoned CFOs that that we consider have very well-run departments are in this range. But the range is 170 to 190, and I know it sounds like a lot, but the comps actually show that is the range.
And then where are you at in terms of finding someone or filling the role, or what do you look at for timing?
We've gotten a lot of resumes and done a fair number of interviews, and hopefully this will be very, hopefully soon we'll have an answer for you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Longo.
Hi, Melissa Longo, District 1. I just had a question about the comps that you were referencing. Which other towns are we talking about there? Just curious.
Actually, our HR head is on a flight right now, but I mean, it's easy to find them. I could probably tonight, I can go grab them myself, but she's grabbed them from many of our surrounding towns. And, I'm assuming Westport, Darien, New Canaan, Oh yeah, we do have a document that was sent to the Board of Finance. Yeah, so we can forward that to you.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if it was in our material, so I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
I don't think I saw it in there. If you could just, you could just forward it to me at your convenience. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We have our town librarian here, Mr. Jarzombek. Did I say that correctly? Wonderful. And I'm sorry, with you is, refresh my memory. Jan Fisher, the deputy town librarian. Thank you.
So the library is experiencing continued growth in usage and engagement. In 2023, we saw a 16% increase in loan material. That's an average of 163 items per hour. A 35% increase in reference desk assistance, with staff helping over 67,000 people, and over 300,000 visits and 77,000 program attendees. These positive trends continue in Q2 of F24 and Q3, with an estimated 15% increase in circulation compared to the same quarter last year, and a 14% increase in visits compared to the same quarter of last year. The library continues to be a vibrant hub for our community, offering valuable resources and fostering strong engagement. The library's continued success necessitates strategic planning for the future. Here are our key focus areas for 2025 that are reflected in this budget. Enhanced resource availability, secure additional resources to meet the growing library demand for library materials. This will ensure that our collection remains vibrant and caters to the evolving needs of our community. Expanded programming. Develop engaging, team-oriented programs. This will foster connection and collaboration and promote the library as a hub for community interaction. National benchmarking. Implement a Library of Things program similar to the successful initiatives nationwide. This allows patrons to borrow everyday items, promoting resource sharing and reducing clutter. Further, develop our existing makerspace to provide more opportunities for creativity and innovation within our community. And reevaluate the library's approach to fines. The goal is to optimize return rates without creating barriers to access. We aim to strike a balance that aligns our mission of providing equal and ready access to resources for lifelong learning. By focusing on these areas, the library will continue to evolve and offer exceptional services that cater to the ever-changing needs of the Fairfield community, a cherished and trusted value-added service to the town. In closing, I'd like to clarify that the teen services librarian that we are asking for is not a luxury. Most libraries in our state that are comparable to our size and budget have a teen librarian at each location. This position would be at Woods, not the main library. And like all staff at Fairfield Public Library, will have a focus, which would be services towards teens. However, they would work in multiple departments and at multiple service desks, something Fairfield Woods desperately needs. I'd also like to remind you that if this position is removed and part-time funding is not added back into our budget, we would actually need to reduce hours and services. While we are proud to be among the top 5 libraries in the state for circulation and teen program participation, our current funding level is at 1.3% of the municipal budget, which falls below the state library's recommended benchmark of 1.6. We understand the importance of fiscal responsibility. Every funding request is carefully considered, taking into account constituent input, national and local trends, and data-driven analysis. We're committed to maximizing the impact of every dollar impacted to us. Investing in the library is an investment in the future of our community. By working together, we can ensure the library continues to thrive as a vibrant hub for learning, connection, and opportunity. And I open the floor to questions.
Thank you, Representative Horton.
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 10. First, I really truly believe that our public library system is one of the best institutions in this country. So I'm fully supportive of everything you're doing. I wanted to really express my support for increasing the teen library services. I think that there's more and more research coming out which supports kind of the benefits of, young adult dedicated librarians, particularly during those hours of 3 to 6 p.m., which are really peak hours for adolescent substance abuse, juvenile crime, other kind of behaviors that adolescents can get into that we don't want them to. With the epidemic of adolescent mental health, I just think having these services is so essential. And so I'm really fully supportive of increasing those services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. I am an obsessive audiobook and digital library participant. I think this year I've already downloaded at least 12 books from Libby. So thank you very much. So my question regarding that is on library materials. 4.4%, is that what you asked for? Do you need more money for digital library? And is there any movement at the state level to address, aren't they trying to make sure that we don't have to like purchase digital and audiobooks that come through the Fairfield Public Library?
Those are great questions, and I feel like you've heard me speak before. So 2 things. We're very careful about our spending when it comes to digital material, simply because it's important for everyone to understand that's a leasing model, not a purchasing model. So those books are not ours. Our issue and what SB 148, which hopefully will go to vote sometime in the next few weeks, and that is completely supported by all of our state level officials. What the library community has done is asked for the publishers to at least negotiate with us those leases, those contracts. From a contract perspective, they're very expensive. And the lease, they're very restrictive in how those materials can be used. So again, we do want publishers to make money. We especially want the individuals that are responsible for the creation of those products to make money as well. But we want it done in a way that is responsible, that is a good investment when it comes to taxpayer money. And we're hoping that's what the bill does. Right now, ebook circulation or e-circulation is about 25% of our overall circulation, yet it's about 50% of our materials budget. So our return on investment is not as high as our physical materials, and we'd really like to see that change. So yes, the demand is growing, especially grew during COVID. It then plateaued for a while, and now it's starting to spike again. So that is primarily why we're asking for that increase. Additionally, one thing that ebooks will never replace are children's books. So some of that ask is actually an increase for children's material. An ebook cannot replace a great picture book. A Mo Williams book is just not as much fun when it's on a Kindle. So we've seen high demand. It's really driven us to be one of the highest. The children's has really driven us to be one of the highest circulating libraries in the state. So therefore, a good amount of that money will actually be put towards that part of the collection.
Thank you. My friend of mine's one of your children's librarians. So do current new titles, are their leases different from older classics? Or are they all in leasing, all digital books are all on leasing?
There is no standardized contract. We never know what it's going to be. Sometimes it's the amount of time we're allowed to own material or lease material. So we'll make a purchase. It's usually twice the amount of a physical book, but we only are allowed to have it for 2 years, or maybe it's 24 borrows. It really depends on the book and the publisher. So it is very hard to project what our budget's going to look like in a year or 2 years. And we do wonder aloud if that's part of the plan, which is really to force us to no longer want to use ebooks in our collection because it's become difficult for Fairfield. We can afford to do it. For smaller libraries, there are a lot of smaller libraries that are cutting back on their ebook purchasing just because it no longer makes sense for them. And there may be a time in the future, and this is what we're really trying to convince other libraries like ours, that if we don't make a stand now, we may be in really difficult waters 2, 3, 4 years from now.
So you think they would prefer to sell you a hardcover?
I'm just cynical. I think they prefer to not sell us anything and just sell their books.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Steele.
Thank you, Jeff Steele, District 3. Thank you for running a strong, vibrant, and leading library organization in the state. And thank you for your passion. You clearly have passion. Couple quick budget items here. One is, you mentioned the deputy librarian. It was added to the main library, but taken away from the woods. Is it just transferred?
Frank can explain that better, why it's in the budget book that way, but our ask for the full-time teen librarian position is for the Woods branch.
Okay, that's my second question. But regarding the deputy, I was curious why it was.
This goes back to the person who previously held that position, who was also the branch librarian. So that money was coming out of the branch budget because that's where she was located. But and
I understand. So
that's not the case any longer.
So switched over to the main library?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the library aide and library associate at Woods, I see one goes down a lot and one goes up. The library aide goes down by in the same number of positions. I'm just curious why one went down 60,000, the other went up. Did they just get retitled or?
It's kind of just like a rectification of positions that have been in the wrong place for over the years for various reasons. Transfer of a person, but not their transfer of their salary.
Okay. And then lastly, regarding the teen librarians, you said that is going to be where again?
So the teen librarian will be at Woods.
So there'll be 2 now, 1 at each library?
1 at each library.
Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the role of the teen librarian? I can fathom what it is, what the role is. Yeah.
So what a teen librarian does is really focus on the age group of about 12 to 18. Or also, we also look at developmental. So our teen librarian currently also works with individuals who are part of the Buddies program at the high school. So they may sometimes be older than 18, but we really look at development between 12 and 18. They do collection development. They build programs and they work in those spaces. They're trained specifically to work with that age group and where they are in their development. We have seen, one of the reasons why we're asking for an additional position is we have seen an increase in negative behavior from this age group. It's really difficult to monitor both of the spaces. Fairfield Woods is right by the middle school. We've traditionally gotten a large crowd of teens and tweens there. However, in the last 2 years, especially coming out of COVID, we're not sure why, but the Ludlow Middle School students have really found us. And that teen room has been busier than it's ever been. So it's really having two well-trained adults at both locations to work with that population. That would be about, I would say it would be anywhere from 60 to 75% of their work or their work focus. But our teen librarians also work within the adult services department as well. So they do hours on the adult services desk that includes weekends and evenings. The library is open till 8. It's open on Saturdays and Sundays. So those bodies could be used there as well. And our teen librarians tend to oversee the majority of our volunteers. Our Friends do have a volunteer coordinator that focuses on more Friends events, but the majority of our volunteers actually come from our middle schools and our high schools. So the staff also monitor and make sure they're doing their work as well.
And I'm sure they do outreach as well to the schools.
Absolutely. Really, the next few months, that's the focus of both our teen librarians and our children's librarians, is to do outreach to the schools, both to get the kids excited about reading and literacy, but also to promote summer reading, which has been proven to really help with student success, not to fall backwards over those summer months.
And I would only guess that, with the increase in mental health issues, that it's not the role of a teen librarian, but they touch on it, and they're not guidance counselors, not social services, but they're sort of at the front lines on a day-to-day basis. So I would assume there's an element of being watchful, or creating programs that are, like you said, addressing some of these behavioral issues or the angst in society at that age.
As a former teen librarian, I will tell you that we do a considerable amount of training, and we do our collection development and also our program planning, really around those ideas, helping people, individuals become adults, become new adults, which is the new term that's out there. Jen, our current teen librarian, our head of teen services, has done a fantastic job reaching out to groups, making sure that organizations are given space and the ability to meet, and also programming that's reflective of their demands. The other thing that we have, which we're incredibly proud of, is a really great teen advisory committee. So this is a group of teens. Sometimes this is 20 kids in the room, helping us think about services and programs that we can provide to bring more teens into the building. There is always, I was one of these kids. There are the kids who don't play sports, and they're also not a part of Key Club or Junior Rotary, but they're looking for a place to belong. So this is, I'm dating myself, but this is since the 80s. Public libraries have really been that space. I think Fairfield, the staff have done an amazing job of really cultivating, I don't want to use the term safe space because I know that bothers some people, but a welcoming space for those teens who might fall between those groups to be comfortable and be successful.
I love that last point. I think that's the biggest selling point. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Barahona.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. I'm driving. I just want to be sure. Representative Barahona, District 6, thank you so much for your presentation and for all the work that you do. I am, as my fellow RTM members know, a social worker who works in systems change work, and one of the proxy indicators we use is third grade reading scores. And that is because it's been proven to be a predictor, very strong predictor of high school graduation and paths for economic mobility for young people. And so when I think of our earlier conversation about the police budget, and I think of the importance of our education budget, our library budget, this is prevention at its finest, and happy to be in support of this additional teen librarian, having 2 teens myself who are not great readers and looking for resources constantly and things that they would engage them. It is so important, and you have my full support and appreciation for your work. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one point I want to add to that is our estimate, and this is very much a back of the envelope estimate, but our estimate is about at the very least 90% of the students in Fairfield have participated in our early literacy programming. So we're proud of that. We're proud of the work that our children's librarians do and the thought that they put into their story times and really promoting early literacy. So I hope at some point in the future to work with the school district to do a study to see what our true impact is.
Thank you. Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. My kids are in their early 20s now. You're supposed to gasp and say, oh my gosh, you can't possibly be the mother of somebody in their early 20s. So I feel a little bit out of the loop. However, I wanted to emphasize the importance of having a teen librarian at Woods, specifically because of the location. So the young people who get out of school at 3 p.m. at Woods have a choice. They can go down to Black Rock and go shopping and buy a soda and mobile, or they could go to the library to Down Under where they belong. And both of my kids did attend regularly and had, like groups of friends that they counted on seeing there. And for those who have working parents where they're in that in-between age where you really can get in a lot of trouble, or you can go be connected and play board games and do stuff with your friends, that's, we know it's programming, but to them, it doesn't necessarily look like programming. It's a recipe for connectedness that I think is really critical now. I can't even imagine post-COVID, the change in the amount of need that there is, because my kids are beyond that age, but I'm fully in support of adding the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carson.
Laura Carson, District 4. I too strongly support the teen librarian at Woods, and I love all that you're saying to help kids, especially today with a lot of mental health issues and a lot of kids feeling, especially at that age, they don't belong, and it's a great way to find a place to belong. But can I ask you another question about something else? In your presentation at Board of Finance, you talked about no fines. Are we in that position now? Are you not going to do fines for late books? And I love the rationale that you said it takes away the stigma and actually encourages people to return books. So where are we with that?
So what's proposed in this budget on the revenue line is a reduction in that revenue with the idea of we're seeing that our peer libraries across the state, not just the ones that we benchmark ourselves against, like Westport, Darien, West Hartford, but also smaller libraries are going fine free. My fear is we'll be the last one. But we also understand that we need to enter into this slowly. So what we're going to introduce, or what we've begun to introduce, is automatic renewals, which the majority of the libraries in the state already do. We haven't publicized it because we're working out the kinks, but it will be something that we will publicize in the coming weeks. This is really just with the idea of it's a low demand book. So in other words, it's not a new book. There's not a hold on it. You have one chapter to read on that James Patterson. We always pick on James Patterson, but it's easy. You have that last chapter to read on your James Patterson book. No one is waiting for it because there's like 15 copies. So therefore, you don't get penalized for holding onto that book for a week longer. So that's what we're going with right now. And then in the coming fiscal year, if this budget passes, then we will explore going fine-free for children's books. This is a model we followed when I was in Albany. I was actually against going fine-free early in my career. I was convinced by my staff at my previous organization through a program similar to what we're thinking about going with, which is just going fine-free for children's material, seeing what the reaction is, seeing what the return rate is, seeing if there's a negative or positive impact on circulation. And then after that, we will explore adults. And mostly this will be for books, not Library of Things, not our loaning, our puzzles and things like that. It's really for books. And it also has an added benefit, which means we can actually keep a larger collection. One of the reasons why libraries weed or deaccession their books is because there's no room on the shelf. So what libraries have discovered when they do automatic renewals or fine free is the more material that's out in the community, the less there is a need for us to weed for space on the shelves. So our collection will actually be able to grow a little bit. So we're going automatic renewals now, hopefully fine free for children in the future, and then we're going to re-examine that.
Thank you.
And one other thing I want to touch on is, we realize, especially for older adults, there is a loneliness epidemic that's happening across the country. So what we're doing for teens, we're also recognizing the need to do that for older adults, for retired individuals. My staff have been incredible in really working with social services around what we're seeing in cognitive decline in individuals in our community. We have our memory kits that we launched. But we're also making sure that we're doing programming so the teenagers have a place where they feel like they fit in, but also our retired adults also have a place they feel like they can fit in. That's creating zoned areas in the library that are actually quiet, but also doing programming that allows socialization, because that's so important when heading off cognitive decline for our older patrons.
Thank you so much. Representative Zezima.
Thank you. Liz Esma, District 4, and I just have to echo what everyone else is saying. I live within walking distance, and I feel really, I'm so grateful to have you there. And the emphasis that you're placing on, age-specific needs in the community with so many libraries under attack around the country. I'm really grateful to live here and for the thought that you put into that. Especially our side of town doesn't have a lot of services, and I think this fills a great need for seniors, for kids. And I also understand you have been in the past the busiest branch in the state. Maybe still?
Yes. That is, it's hard to prove, but our last state report, we kind of feel confident in saying. So.
Congrats. I want to make sure I heard you earlier correctly. You said that you lost a part-time position that you said you need, you wish you could retain. Is that correct?
No, just to clarify, because there was some confusion. There was a reduction in our part-time salary line to partially pay for the full-time position. That was in a previous budget. There were more part-time hours included in the last budget, and that was the focus on teen services. So we recognize that we will not need those hours as much, but they were moved to another department's budget. And our concern is if we were not to get the full-time teen services librarian position, then because it was moved to another department, we might be in a little danger of having those hours reduced.
Understood. Thank you. And I fully support the teen librarian. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Rock is online.
Yeah, Dave Rock, District 2. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just a question about the winter reading challenge and the summer reading challenge. With the addition of the teen librarian, would those two programs open up to teens?
So we do have a teen summer reading challenge and a winter reading challenge. So we also, one of my favorite things is we actually kind of like if you go to a convenience store, you get a card and it gets clipped every time you buy a coffee. We actually do that with our frequent studiers. It's one of my favorite things at the desk when I have a teen walk up with the card and I have to punch it and initial it. So there's a lot of programs that we do around that. And I think adding this position just gives us the ability to do them in a deeper way. Our staff do an incredible job of working past capacity, and having an additional staff member will really improve the quality, not just for teens, but also for adults and children.
That's great. I fully support what you guys are doing, and my business actually supports what you guys are doing as well. Anybody who signs up for the Winter Reading Challenge or the Summer Reading Challenge gets a free Dave's Gourmet Paletas for anybody who signs up. So I love what you guys do. We support it. I support it on a personal and on my business as well. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Wolk.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to our pals over here. I'm Jay Wolk, District 5. So a while back, a couple years back, I remember doing a tour of the Fairfield Woods Library, a bunch of us from the RTM at that time who was on it. And I know people here, some of them weren't there. But anyway, I remember doing the tour, and I also remember that the Fairfield Woods Library was having a difficulty with maintenance of the roofs and stuff. So leaks, we went through all that downstairs, what was going on. So I'm seeing on the budget book, which is on page 206, that it's been pretty much, status. It's been equal through the years. What's the spendings? 25,000, 21,000. So it's all been about the same. So is everything all right? I mean, we've also did a tour with the main library also, but it was the Fairfield Woods Library that was having the problem. So is that all corrected and you guys are okay?
So the roof's in very good condition. DPW does a fantastic job keeping the physical plant running and in order. We have a new HVAC system. We had some difficulties with it, but that has changed and been corrected. HVAC is something I know a lot about. Being a library director really makes you an expert in some of the things you never thought you ever would be. But the board is interested in exploring some improvements to that location. There really is some of the equipment, the shelving is antiquated. We would really like to, in the next few years, explore a way to kind of modernizing the services at that branch. And much like the main library, this is something that the trustees are interested in investing in.
I would be an advocate with you for that. And the library is beautiful, and thank you for everything that you guys do. Really, my wife uses it all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding the library? Seeing none, I just want to say thank you so much for all the services. I miss it when my kids were teens. They were there frequently before COVID and took advantage of a lot of the services. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Marsilio, you're back up here. And Public Works starts at page 163. We'll start with building. We have Mr. Mahoney on the WebEx on page 175.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for thank you for staying up with us. Buildings budget, pretty much no changes really. We did take stuff out of certain areas, move it to other areas, with exception of contractual increases. We pretty much stayed flat. We are fully staffed and fully operational and moving ahead, and be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding building item on the budget? I see none. I thank you so much, Mr. Mahoney, for sitting on WebEx with us during this time.
Thank you
for everything you do.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Mr. Hurley's here. We'll call him up for page 181, engineering.
Sorry, actually, Bucky is going to present, and I'm here for backup this time.
Wonderful.
So I will be presenting the budgets this evening for engineering, solid waste and recycling, public works administration, public works operation, and the Water Pollution Control Authority. I would ask that this panel recognize the fact that all of those departments work closely together. We support each other. Some of these budgets in these discrete iterations are budgets that reflect the need to collaborate, to share, and that's what we do. That's the culture that we've that we've tried to create with these service budgets. This budget for all of those services exceeds $30 million. It's after the Board of Education, it's the largest budget in town that me and my staff oversee. And in addition to the operating budget, those of you who heard of our capital program realize that that also requires personnel, software, expertise, and the like. So I'm presenting the operating budgets, but there's also a need to recognize that behind the operations is probably the largest capital program that the town has had in many, many, many decades. We can start with engineering, and I can tell you that the major difference in engineering is converting a part-time administrative assistant to a full-time assistant. And beyond that, they're asking for an replacement or upgrade in their survey equipment. And essentially, those are the major changes in the engineering budget.
Thank you. Is there any questions regarding the engineering line item? Representative Carson.
Hi, Laura Carson, District 4. Why is seasonal payroll up so much this year?
Up so much?
Well, it went from 5,000 to 15,000.
Is that on the engineering line item?
Is that engineering 51070?
So
Thank you.
So for the first time, and we expect to take care of our obligations, one of which is a sign inventory that is mandated by the state, and we have never done that. So we need a couple of engineering people to go out and document every sign in town. Take those locations, put them into a layer in our GIS system, and have that for everyone to reference in all of these departments. That's essentially it. Plus, because we have this capital program, we also need hands to do survey work and hold the rod and direct traffic at times and the like. So that increase in seasonals is going to address that. And you'll see in the Public Works budget, there's also a seasonal budget. And we will be sharing seasonals as the requirements occur.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding engineering? We'll go on to solid waste and recycling, page 198.
Main driver of solid waste and recycling is a new contract that was negotiated for our 12 community consortium that increased our tipping fees, which is the cost to deliver our municipal solid waste to the Wheelabrator Authority by 21%. This was bid out and unfortunately, there was only one bid, and it was by the existing facility that takes our waste now. There were no economies, and And unfortunately, it's just something we're going to have to live with until somebody on the state level makes some changes to provide more competition in that area of our business here.
Thank you. Are there any questions for about solid waste and recycling? Representative Pistilli.
Thanks. Sharon Pistilli, District 5. So we're, there is no recycling rebate, and there will be no recycling rebate in the foreseeable future because of the complete fallout and for the need of like plastics, for instance, right? Are we actually recycling right now?
That's correct. You sound like you know what the.
I was chair of solid waste and recycling for 10 years.
So you understand what has happened with the China effect and the single stream recycling impact and having contaminated loads that aren't recyclable and have no value and diminish the value of those tons, and in fact have prompted a turn in the past 12 years of $35 rebates to $100 tipping fees.
And so the tip fees that we're going to pay to Wheelabrator, we have to pay to Wheelabrator by the ton, or if we reduce our tonnage, our fees go down?
It's a unit price.
Okay, so have we explored a food scraps program? Because that would be like a really significant percentage of our waste that's really heavy. If we were to implement a food scraps program, like I think Middletown, did Middletown do it? Or is that they had pay as you throw, but there are municipalities who are exploring that, and perhaps that would reduce the tip fees. Have we talked about that?
I'm going to be honest with you. We talk to public works directors all over the state all the time. And the reality of the kitchen waste program is that it's mission driven and not fiscally driven. It's the right thing to do, but you won't save any money. And there is no consistent program throughout the state in order to convert that into either compost or methane or anything else that could be useful. There is no statewide consistent program for which to address this.
So it won't impact tip fees. Are there any other ideas for how to reduce? I mean, that's a huge hit. Any other brainstorms on that?
Trust me, I've brainstormed this with other people in our group. And this is, look, please don't get me started on this tonight because it's late. And I know more than I ever wanted to know about solid waste and recycling. And I've been doing this for 40 years. And it's the most frustrating thing that I've ever experienced. What we have is a monopoly in this state with no controls. It's like a public utility with no PURA. They charge what they want to charge, and we're hostages to that. So that's what's been created.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Steele.
Thank you, Jeff Steele, District 3. I'm going to follow up on a couple of those questions. How much MSW is there per year that comes out of Fairfield? How many tons?
31,000 tons.
31,000 tons. Does it all go to Wheelabrator, or does any go to a landfill? I mean, there's the recyclables go out, but.
Well, there's approximately 4,800 tons of recyclables. There's 31,000 tons of MSW. All of the MSW goes to Wheelabrator. All of the recyclables go to Oak Ridge and Shelton for, to be recycled, whatever portion of it can be.
And what is the tip fee again that Wheelabrator charges per ton?
So the new tip fee for this year went from $70 and change to $85.25.
$85. Oh, wow.
Now that's the tip fee. On top of that, you have to add the transportation cost.
Yep.
For both recycling and MSW.
And what's the transport cost for a Wheelabrator, sending to Wheelabrator?
$17.63 for MSW.
Per ton, right?
Per ton.
Yeah.
And $28.60 for recyclables.
Is there any
yeah,
go ahead.
And the tip fee for recyclables is $100 a ton.
Okay. Is there any concern about the Wheelabrator facility as many waste to energy facilities around the country are becoming dated and closing?
Well, the simple answer is no. It's very profitable.
I know it's profitable. Falling apart.
Yeah. So, and they spend a lot of money on maintenance in that. I had State Representative Gresco, who's co-chair of the Environmental Committee, pulled the stack emissions reports for that plant. And in the past 10 years, there were only 2 episodes where the exhaust exceeded thresholds, and the plant immediately shut down until that was reconciled. But of course, you know, I hate to say this, garbage in, garbage out. You know, what we throw away in our trash is what occurs in those stacks. And if there's lithium batteries and things like that that they can't control, they can't see, that's what happens. But that's a very efficient plant. They make a lot of money in it. You know, they have 2 sources of income, energy and trash. And energy, the UI is higher than it's ever been. And trash is obviously 21% more revenue for them.
Yeah, it's a dated way to dispose of waste, and certainly is a more polluting method, but it is what it is. It's what we got, and there are better ways, but we won't go into that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to Public Works and Administration. Page 163.
So there's not much to report here. Increases were contractual, and everything else, as I like to say, if you liked this and approved it last year, you're gonna like it this year. I mean, it's just last year's budget with increase contractually for the administrative assistant.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding Public Works Administration? All right, we'll go on to page 167, Public Works Operations.
So this contract was settled last year, and there was an increase in salaries. The staffing levels are the same, consistent. I can report that we will have an excess in overtime for snow removal this year, and which is a nice thing to have, but and nice for us too, because that is one of the primary efforts that we engage in annually and keeping the town safe. I will say this, on that budget item, it's kind of deceiving because there weren't that many snowstorms, but there were a lot of slippery ice accumulations that we had to respond to. So there's an excess in overtime, but not what you might think.
You. Are there any questions regarding Public Works? Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Bucky. Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Thank you very much for the tour the other day. I learned so much. One thing that I think the rest of our team might be interested to know about, you were telling us that when the truck comes in, even if it's just the smallest amount of ice, that you like change the blades and it's like a race car. It's like you're doing the Formula One.
Drew, that's when we plow. If you watch a snowplow go down the street, you'll see sparks coming out underneath the blades. And we were changing those cutting edges. The blades are replaceable after every single storm on every single truck. And we've converted to a little more expensive steel. And now we can get 3 or 4 snow events responses.
Passes or events?
No, events. Yeah.
So, because was interesting to me that even there's not a lot of snow, it's still the same amount of maintenance. Is that true?
Sure. I mean, they travel the same number of miles. They're just not pushing snow. They're putting down salt. Yeah, so.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on Public Works operations? Representative Wolk?
Thanks, Madam Moderator. I just have a quick question. I don't know if this is part of what we're talking about, but I'm talking, hey, Bucky, thanks for that tour. Had a good time. You guys are okay? Is this part of it with trucks, that you need? You have anything out?
I'm not bashful when I ask for equipment that we need. And if I needed equipment, I would ask you for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? All right, last item, page 252, Water Pollution Control Authority. I also think we have Mr. Bodie online from WebEx. So I hate to have him sit there this whole meeting and not be recognized for that. Go ahead, Mr. Marsilio.
So this is an enterprise fund. This is what the commission approved. Some of the larger items in this budget are the I&I component, and there are a number of increases in the salary positions that were dictated by the operation and organization audits that we have done this year. So they have been budgeted to conform with the audits that were done by a third party. And so those are the large increases that you will see. I spoke a little bit last evening about I&I, and there's just a big problem here, and we're going to have to devote a lot of effort and dollars to address this, because that portion of the system has suffered from benign neglect, and it's impactful to the extent that we just can't ignore this anymore. So between operating costs, operating budgeting for I&I, and capital budgeting for I&I, we're going to put a full court press on this, and we're going to cure this as best we can.
Thank you. Anyone not have enough answers or questions about Water Pollution Control Authority yesterday? Have any questions now? Seeing none, thank you so much. Mr. Marsilio, we appreciate you spending 2 nights with us, and we appreciate everything your departments do around town.
Thank you.
It's a lot. Thank you. Before I adjourn, I just want to remind everyone that we have our regular meeting on the 29th at 8 p.m. and we have our voting meeting on May 6th at 8 p.m. Other than that, we're going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Good night.